Chapter 51. After some hesitation, everyone wrote down their own answers. 5 hands held their own answer sheets together, with the same answer in different handwritings on them. River. A river can run but never walk, has an estuary but never speaks, has a source but never sheds tears, has a riverbed but never sleeps. Correct answer. Mao Tuan nodded excitedly. Do you want to continue guessing? Uther glanced at his roommates who were all very interested, and said to Mao Tuan. Ask a question. In Hogwarts for a year, it's just the right opportunity to accompany it. And Mao Tuan is the only Sphinx he can guarantee will not attack them if they answer the riddle incorrectly. Some people try to hide, some people try to deceive, but time will reveal everything, and we will always meet. It can be seen that Mao Tuan seems to have saved a lot of riddles, and he hardly hesitated when he said a new riddle. Try your best to guess my name, and when I really have you, I promise you will know the answer. After a guess, this time Cologne did not answer correctly. The answer is death, and Cologne's answer is the end-of-year exam paper. Some people try to hide, some people try to deceive, but time will reveal everything, and we will always meet. I think this answer seems to be okay. Bernard smiled bitterly. But Cologne, you obviously did well in the exam. Doing well in the exam doesn't mean I like exams. Cologne said it with confidence. Mao Tuan was entangled for a while, and had to admit that for Hogwarts students, this answer did fit the riddle, and reluctantly determined that Cologne got it right. It seems that this is still an enlightened Sphinx. Adam is willing to call it an enlightened beast, the enlightened beast located in Kunlun-su, China, Aachu. Everyone then guessed a few more riddles. Although the answers given sometimes contradicted Mao Tuan thought carefully and it seemed that there was no problem. So in the end, until Mao Tuan said goodbye, the 5 people were in a state of all the answers. Mao Tuan waved goodbye to them in high spirits. In fact, there is nothing particularly interesting inside the pyramid. Entering the main body of the pyramid, while introducing, Uther took out lighting tools from his bag and distributed them to everyone. The only valuable things for us are the words and statues on the wall, but you can't read them, I will translate them for you. Wow, Uther, you are really amazing, you know so many languages. Cologne couldn't help but sigh. Although Uther's family communicates in English most of the time, they occasionally use Arabic, and now these are ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics on the wall. Ahem, it's actually okay. The darkest skin among the 5 people couldn't hide the blush on his cheeks. Uther translated the inscriptions on the wall for everyone and explained the stories behind the statues. Some of them praised the achievements of the pharaoh when he was alive, and some wished the pharaoh a smooth resurrection. The parts about the achievements were the wizard version, so Adam was also amazed. It is worth mentioning that in order to express respect for the gods and the pharaoh, the biggest requirement for the hieroglyphics is beauty and symmetry. For this reason, it can be written vertically or horizontally, from left to right or from right to left, depending on the lines between the characters and the direction of the heads of the animals. This made everyone sigh. It's just like drawing. In that era, only those who mastered the characters could access the mysteries of knowledge, and those who mastered the hieroglyphics mastered the most profound knowledge magic. Uther stroked the hieroglyphics on the wall, sighing at the ancient past, and suddenly seemed to touch something. What is this? Uther looked closely and saw that it was an Eye of Horus, which represented the pharaoh in this passage. The Eye of Horus looked normal, and with doubt, Uther reached out his hand again and gently placed it on the Eye of Horus. Sure enough, he touched the bulge again. After confirming, Uther decisively withdrew his hand. How could there be such an abnormal bulge in the inscription of the pyramid, and it was on the Eye of Horus, which symbolizes holiness and pharaoh. Not to mention that this point seemed to be deliberately hidden. Uther remembered that this pyramid was not built to welcome future generations to visit, so he should go back and ask his father. Everyone has seen enough, right? Let's go back. There was really nothing new left, and everyone nodded in response. Back in the villa in Cairo, Uther said that he had prepared Egyptian-style clothing for everyone, that is, the karassiris he was wearing. Let everyone change, his parents will come back early in the evening, and everyone will go boating on the Nile together. Unexpectedly, under the guidance of Uther's servants, everyone changed into karassilis and came out, but Uther still made them wait for a long time. When he came down from the 2nd floor, Uther was immediately surrounded by Adam and others. Great! No wonder you took so long, I didn't expect you to change into such a beautiful dress. Bernard hooked his fingers on Uther's belt inlaid with turquoise and other gems and dragged him forward, and Cologne pushed his back from behind. After changing into this, we are just like your followers. Okay, okay, brothers are connected with you, and you are playing tricks with your brothers. Adam stretched out his hand to summon the dark staff, and the spikes of the sun and the gems on Uther's body sparkled together in the sun. I hope you can give us a reasonable explanation, otherwise you may have to participate in the evening cruise naked. At most, I will leave you a pair of underwear. Eugene added. Didn't you say you wanted to see me wearing Egyptian clothes? Uther cried out in injustice, and opened his hands to show off his clothes with golden patterns and various gems. My father and I are the only ones in Egypt who can wear this. Isn't it special enough? So this is your last words, right? Adam slashed him. Bernard and Eugene lifted Uther up, and Adam raised the dark staff as if he was about to chop him. After a lot of antics, Uther finally changed into the same clothes as everyone else when he and everyone else were rafting on the Nile River. After all, although Adam and his friends didn't dare to do anything in Egypt, they would have to go back to Hogwarts after school started. These people might actually strip him down to his underwear. They played in Cairo for 4 days, went to Thebes for 7 days, and went around other cities for less than a day. Adam and his friends played for nearly a month before saying goodbye to Uther. Before leaving, Uther gave each of them a roll of papyrus, which was written in hieroglyphics, which Adam and the others could not understand. This is a blessing from Amun-Ra. Ra and Amun were the main gods of the Heliopolis Ennead and Thebes octagonal gods, respectively, and later the two merged into one. So this roll of papyrus should be a friendship letter of some diplomatic nature. I look forward to tasting the taste of my hometown in Hogwarts. Before leaving, Uther could not help but remind them. No problem. After saying goodbye to Uther, everyone set off on the return journey. Chapter 52. After returning home to London and seeing the letter from Hogwarts, Adam remembered that he still had to buy new textbooks this year. Although Adam had almost bought all the books in Flourish and Blots before, he couldn't help but think that Gilderoy Lockhart had published a new book this year. Yes, Adam had bought several of his old works. After all, although this guy has no other skills except the Oblivion spell, the experiences he stole are genuine and have a certain reference value. In addition, we have to admit that Lockhart's writing style is also very good. It is also a kind of ability to write real adventures in an attractive way. Just looking at his works as novels is also good. When you go to Diagon Alley, you can also visit the vault left by Nicholas Flamel. Thinking of Nicholas Flamel, Adam couldn't help but feel a little depressed, and put the list of books sent by Hogwarts aside. Hey? Are there any other letters? When he opened it, it turned out to be from Harry. Adam had sent a letter to Harry to confirm which snowy owl Aries liked. Harry couldn't reply because his window was sealed with iron bars. Later, he was taken to the Weasley family to send the letter, but Adam was already in Egypt at that time. Fortunately, there was nothing important in the letter. It only said that he was very happy to receive Adam's letter and explained why he hadn't replied. In addition, he also wrote a series of exclamations about the magic of wizard families. Hedwig should be doing well now, you can rest assured. Adam nodded to Aries. Goo. Aries waved his wings, still looking indignant. The trip ended without any trouble. With a tired grandfather and a still sad grandmother, Adam came to Diagon Alley alone. After hesitating for a while, he decided to go to Flourish and Blots first. It shouldn't take too long to buy a book. Then he regretted it. Gilderoy Lockhart. Autobiography for sale. The Magic Me. Today afternoon 12:30–4:30. Looking at the banner in front of him, Adam paused and silently planned to turn around and go to Gringotts to buy the book after the signing event. Adam paused and turned around in surprise. Cologne. Cologne said something to the people around him, then trotted over to Adam. What a coincidence, are you here to buy new textbooks for next semester? Yes, but it looks like there are too many people here. I plan to go somewhere else first and come back after the book signing. Is that so? I envy you. Your parents must have never read Lockhart's books, and your grandparents probably don't like Lockhart either. Cologne sighed. He sighed. My mother likes him very much. I have to wait in line for who knows how long to get Lockhart's autograph. So pitiful. Yet. That can't be helped. After all, she's your mother. Just wait. Under Cologne's incredulous gaze, Adam sighed. I'm not interested in this kind of female killer. I'll be leaving first. Goodbye. After saying that, Adam turned around and ran away, turning a deaf ear to Cologne's tearful call behind him. "Take me to the number 4 secret vault." The goblin, who was originally busy with the things at hand, was stunned when he heard Adam's words, and looked up at Adam. Adam stood in front of the goblin and let the other party look at him. A gemstone was suspended on the top of the dark staff in his hand, shining brightly. Key. Although he had never met the other party, and there was no information about this person in Gringotts, for non-private secret vaults, Gringotts only recognized the key and not the person. As long as the corresponding secret vault key could be produced, they would not delve into the story behind it. Adam took out the key and handed it to the goblin. The goblin checked it and returned it to Adam. "Please follow me." Jumping down from the high stool, the goblin's tone was obviously respectful. Every single-digit secret vault represented amazing wealth and status, and even Gringotts did not dare to treat it casually. Riding Gringotts' mine cart, passing through a series of magical protections, passing through the anti-thief waterfall, and coming to an unknown depth of the underground, Adam and the goblin stopped in front of a gate. "Please give me the key." The goblin hung the lantern in his hand on the hook by the door, inserted the key with one hand, and tapped the door with the other hand, twisting the key in his hand from time to time. With the sound of countless mechanisms turning, the door of the number 4 secret vault slowly opened towards Adam. "I'll wait for you at the door." After returning the key to Adam, the fairy bowed and retreated behind the door. The location of the secret vault is not visible. Adam stepped into the secret vault and looked around. Indeed, as Nicholas Flamel said, there were no coins in it, and about half of it was his manuscripts, but Nicholas Flamel did not say that this secret vault was so big. Adam picked up one of the single-page manuscripts. On one side, there were complex alchemical formulas and diagrams, and on the other side, the process of the phoenix's nirvana was painted with colorful paints. Adam also felt that this phoenix was very familiar. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like Fox. Putting down the manuscripts, Adam hastily counted them. Some of these manuscripts were bound together, and some were just single pages like that manuscript. It would take until the next time to move these things away and then slowly sort them out. Nicholas Flamel's collection opened Adam's eyes. He glanced at it casually and saw something that made him very familiar. There is even a meditation basin. Touching the stone basin that looked very similar to the one in the principal's office, Adam didn't know whether Nicholas Flamel made it himself or where he got it from. In addition, there are many things from the Muggle world, such as dresses, armor, swords, golden cups, scepters. These things have no magic power, and perhaps they are collected here because they have some kind of commemorative significance to Nicholas Flamel. Nicholas Flamel's collection is mostly books, most of which are related to alchemy, and there are books in all kinds of languages. In addition, there are many books about mysticism. Adam even found several Bibles in the pile of books. With the idea that the church might really have something in this world, Adam opened the Bibles, and then embarrassedly found that although he could not understand the words on them, he could clearly see that the contents of several Bibles seemed to be different. In the end, Adam selected a few things to take away today, and the rest would be sorted out slowly later. One of them is a set of swords and shields made of fairy mithril. Adam thinks they are really handsome and suitable for the sword and shield in the Clow cards, so he spent some time on the spot to cast a sealing magic on this set of swords and shields, so that he can summon them at any time in the future. What? The dark staff can also be directly transformed into a sword using the magic of the sword card, and the shield can be cast without a real shield? But the gems and patterns on this set of swords and shields are really special. Unique. Cool. The second is a shorthand feather pen, which is Nicholas Flamel's alchemical creation. It can record and even draw the owner's thoughts and ideas in real time, exactly as the owner thinks, and even the color can be adjusted at will. Nicholas Flamel's manuscript was completed with this shorthand feather pen. It can perfectly help Adam free his hands when doing homework and do more meaningful things such as touching Xiaoke and SPI. The last one is a notebook that seems to be Nicholas Flamel's research on ancient characters that are said to have mysterious powers, including Nordic runes, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Chinese cloud seal characters, etc. Adam thinks he can study it in his spare time. The only problem is that the main body of this notebook is French, and he still needs to spend some time to learn it. Chapter 53. Coming out of Gringotts and standing at the door of Flourish and Blots, which was still crowded, Adam remembered that he should stay in Gringotts for a while longer. He was so dazzled by the treasures in the secret vault that he even forgot that there was a liar here who was trying to cheat him out of money. Fortunately, there were fewer people in the bookstore at this time, so at least it didn't delay his normal book purchases. Just as Adam was checking out a new textbook, a figure jumped out from the darkness. Ha! Cologne, you haven't left yet. Adam was not surprised at all when Cologne grabbed his shoulder. If he hadn't noticed that Cologne had been bounced out by the shield at this time. Of course not, my mother is still queuing over there. Auntie is still queuing. Yes, those who have signed in now are those who have been queuing here since early in the morning. Ah, this. Adam had a clearer understanding of Lockhart's popularity. Adam, why did you only buy one? I've already bought the other books. Cologne was surprised. You like Lockhart, too. The plots in his books are still very exciting. Then I have good news, do you want to know? Good news. Adam raised his eyebrows. Did your Niffler give birth? Oh, not yet, it will take a few months, don't worry. No, not this, it's good news about Lockhart. Oh. Adam's tone was a little disappointed. What is that? Lockhart is our next defense against the dark arts professor. Oh. Seeing Adam's reaction, Cologne was a little disappointed. What? You really don't seem to be interested in Lockhart. Do you want to hear the gossip that happened here before? Gossip? Tell me in detail. It was in this bookstore before that the twins' father and old Malfoy had a fight. Oh. Adam's eyes widened slightly. He actually guessed it when he saw the banner, but it shouldn't be such a coincidence. He didn't expect it to be today. It's a pity that he missed the opportunity to see the Horcrux up close. He actually had a doubt. What would happen if magic like the gum card, which directly changes matter, was used on the Horcrux? Would Voldemort's soul turn into sweets? Or what kind of effect would other Clow cards have on the Horcrux? Can the counter curse of the Horcrux be analyzed? Wait. The diary Horcrux should be in Ginny's hands now, and it also indicates that there will be an uncontrollable danger in Hogwarts next the Basilisk. Unlike the first year's challenge with Professor Quirrell and the trapdoor on the 4th floor, where you can basically avoid danger as long as you hide, the Basilisk in the second year will move along the drainage pipes of the entire castle. Adam can't guarantee that anyone will not encounter a Basilisk or that a place will be safe. If he hadn't gotten the Clow cards, Adam should have considered taking a leave of absence at this time, but now. Adam couldn't help but start to think about whether it would lead to uncontrollable developments if he killed the Basilisk in advance. Professor Dumbledore is still strong and healthy now, so there should be no problem, right? Hiss, thinking about it this way, if I catch this Basilisk in advance, there will be no problem, right? You know, the Basilisk is not a magical animal born through normal reproduction. In this era, there may be only this one Basilisk left in the world. Senior Newt, who is well informed, may not have seen this one. Doesn't it sound exciting? And they both just used their fists to fight. They even knocked down a few bookshelves. It was really exciting. Adam sighed, regretting that he was not there at the time. If he had gotten the diary, many things would have been more controllable. Speaking of Malfoy, Draco and his followers were frequent customers of his store. After all, Draco was rich and his followers were greedy. In the novel, this guy was a complete bad guy, and he was forced to reform in the end, but the movie may have considered that it was aimed at children and the influence of the movie was greater than the novel, or perhaps the actor's appearance brought popularity to this character, so the plot of this character was finally changed a little. For example, when assassinating Dumbledore, in the novel, Draco simply didn't have the ability, but in the movie, he showed his inner struggle. In short, Adam's impression of him was not too bad. Especially when he opens a restaurant in the future, these vain nobles will only need to provide them with some additional things that have no practical significance or value. Services can often charge a large amount of extra fees. After paying the bill quickly, Adam was about to go back, but was stopped by Cologne. It's really boring here. Come chat with me. I'll treat you to ice cream. Adam had no choice but to stay with Cologne in Flourish and Blots for a while. After that, the two of them ate a bowl of ice cream sprinkled with nuts before saying goodbye and leaving. Maybe the convenience store can also put ice cream and other frozen products on the shelves. On the way back, Adam thought so. After that day, time seemed to be controlled by the time card and flew forward rapidly. When Adam buried his head in SBI's belly, it seemed like he was still in the last second, but when he raised his head, school was about to start. Oh, I can still pet cats in Hogwarts, so it's okay. After politely declining the idea of His grandparents coming here to send Adam to school, Adam took Mr. Reed's car to King's Cross Station. Adam, study hard in school and your business will be prosperous. Mr. Reed joked before getting off the car. Because of Adam, Mr. Reed and Ms. Lee were a little busy some time ago. Many people in strange clothes came to their store. They were very skilled in ordering food, but many of the dishes they ordered were not available in their store, and they didn't know how to record and report the money they paid in the end. After some inquiries, the two learned that their son's business was booming in school. You are worthy of being my son. In addition to being proud, Ms. Lee was also a little worried about whether her son's business in school was not good. It's not that she was worried about her academic performance. If she really wanted to focus on this, then Adam's transcript of all OS would be enough to dispel her concerns. Mainly in the process of doing business, purchasing, pricing, publicity, competition, too many conflicts of interest made the business itself inevitably tainted with some things that she didn't want her son to be exposed to too early, even if these would be exposed to her son sooner or later. Although Ms. Lee doesn't like studying, she has to admit that the time in school was the cleanest and purest time in her life. She doesn't want her son to lose this experience that he will never have the chance to make up for once he misses it. Relatively speaking, Mr. Reed is much more optimistic. Anyway, it's already like this, and his son's business is still doing well, so let's continue to do it. Who can say that a simple campus life is definitely better? Chapter 54. Before the express train departed, Adam quickly gathered with the Badgers who had not met during the holiday, and they all shared their holiday experiences. Adam, why are there many foods not available in your restaurant? This is probably the most frequently asked question to Adam, and Adam can only explain that those are the specialties of his place, and don't ask, just tell him whether they are delicious or not. The Badgers who have brought their families to experience it, it is indeed delicious. Adam did not open the store because he could not perform magic at home and did not prepare any goods, so after the express train departed, everyone dispersed, and Adam and his dormitory also found a private room for a small meeting. Brothers, I thought about it carefully after I went back. It turned out that we didn't choose the right time last time. Bernard whispered. This time we go at night. 5 of us will hold lanterns together and look for the footprints of the moon-crazy beast under the moonlight. It must be a special atmosphere. Aren't you afraid that we will step into the territory of the 8-eyed giant spider again under the moonlight? Cologne looked entangled. He didn't want to experience the feeling of disturbing the 8-eyed giant spider again. Didn't we already know where the nest of the Acromanthus was last time? This time we just need to avoid it. Bernard touched his chin and said. And we had no experience last time. I thought about it after I went back. When we didn't find any traces of magical animals along the way, we should have realized that the direction was wrong. That's true. And we didn't see any unicorns, centaurs, or moon beasts last time. Don't you feel regretful? Bernard stretched out his hands to both sides. If it doesn't work, there are still these big legs to hug, and do you have a flying broom? If you can't beat us, just run away. The 3 people who were hugged by the shoulders looked at each other and nodded. Cologne thought for a while. Forget about unicorns and moon beasts. Even he has never seen magical animals like centaurs. As for the safety issue, Bernard's words seemed to make sense. Okay. Let's go check it out sometime. What to check out? The door of the carriage was suddenly pulled open, revealing the curious faces of the twins. Go check out the kitchen. Adam readily conjured up a table of desserts. What's wrong? What do you want from me? Haha. We know. Adam, you must have some stock for yourself. The twins unceremoniously reached out and grabbed a candy and threw it into their mouths. Nothing, we just came to check it out. By the way, ask about the business plan after school starts. During this holiday, the book list sent by Hogwarts made the already poor Weasley family even worse off. Although Mrs. Molly liked Lockhart very much, her liking obviously wouldn't make Lockhart's books cheaper. Every child who was still studying at Hogwarts had to buy 7 books, not to mention that the youngest Ginny was going to school this year, which was a big burden on the Weasley family's financial situation. At this time, the twins, who were able to take out a sum of money so that Ginny didn't have to buy second-hand goods and the family didn't have to cut down on expenses, enjoyed an extraordinary sense of accomplishment. As for the small question that was also questioned by Mrs. Molly about what they were doing in school when they didn't study hard, the twins, who received the admiring eyes of their sister, said to sprinkle water. Adam thought for a while. Let's put it on the afternoon of the first Saturday. By the way, I also plan to put the first new product experience on that day. The weather is so hot that I think I can make some ice cream to eat. Last year, when Adam's store was formed, the weather had turned cold. When it turned hot again, it was the review period before the exam. Adam had never thought of selling ice cream until he ate ice cream in Diagon Alley during the holiday. After the twins left, Adam thought that the next journey would return to normal. Have you, the British Wizarding World, started to study flying cars? Uther looked out the window, his expression confused and a bit dreamy, with a beauty that was questioning whether he had woken up. Adam, who was playing with a cat toy with candy on the top and a toy, was stunned when he heard this. He turned his head and looked out the window. What caught his eye was a Ford car outside the window, or to be more precise, in the air outside the window, wobbling and barely keeping the same direction as the express train. Wow, this is so cool! Bernard's eyes lit up. Why doesn't Diagon Alley sell flying cars? I think that kind of thing is probably not for sale, because it is probably illegal. Eugene said silently. There were two people in the same dormitory who had just come into contact with the Wizarding World. One was Edwin. And others, the other one likes to play and doesn't know much about the law. Eugene is the one who knows the laws of the Wizarding World the best among the 5 people. Wait. Cologne leaned against the window and stared carefully for a while. Am I seeing it wrong? It seems that the person in the car is Harry Potter? Who is the other one? It's blocked and I can't see clearly. Uther frowned. Your savior really brings some surprises to everyone every year. I think he is probably not attracting attention. Eugene shook his head. Look at his expression, it doesn't look like the excitement of successfully attracting attention, but more like fear. Adam did not participate in the discussion. Seeing this scene, he remembered some details that he had forgotten. There was no way, he couldn't remember everything after so many years. There seemed to be a lively scene to watch tomorrow morning. Just now you said that thing was illegal, right? Will they be expelled? Bernard looked at Eugene. Eugene narrowed his eyes at the flying Ford outside the window. He recalled the last school year, the trolls on Halloween, the evil curses in the Quidditch game, and the inexplicable extra points Harry and his friends got at the end of year party. A series of abnormalities added together seemed to foreshadow something. Eugene spoke slowly. I think, probably not. As Eugene said, they did not receive the news that Harry Potter was expelled, and the absence of the sorting ceremony made everyone who was paying attention to this matter know that the other person in the flying Ford with Harry was Ronald Weasley. Mrs. Molly's voice, amplified 100 times, rang in the hall. Well, everyone who is not paying attention to this matter should know it now. It was obviously the movement from Gryffindor, but the exaggerated sound of the howler still shook the tableware on the Hufflepuff long table. What is that? Bernard was shocked when he saw this kind of scene for the first time. Is this some kind of wizard version of a stun bomb? Howler, the effect is as you can see. Cologne wiped his hands and turned to look at the Gryffindor table with interest. Although the half-eaten baked potato fell into the cream of mushroom soup, this little thing was obviously not worth mentioning compared to the rare excitement of the howler. Although he was not very interested in the breakfast at Hogwarts, Adam, who came to join in the fun because he remembered this, also looked over. The content of the howler continued, and under the gaze of almost everyone in the hall, poor Ronald Weasley himself buried his face deeply in the plate in front of him. Chapter 55. Maybe it was because of the school-wide excitement in the morning that everyone was in a good mood. Well, it was pretty good until the first class. Ms. Abbott, I don't think the flobberworm will slice itself, hey. The low-ending tone made Hannah quickly pick up the slicing knife. Okay, Professor. Why are you looking at me? Are you waiting for me to help you stir the potion in the crucible? Professor Snape's eyes narrowed and he looked at a student who had been distracted and forgot to stir the potion. Professor Snape glanced around the classroom, ignoring a certain outlier very naturally, and slowly walked to the podium. I hope that a vacation has not emptied your brains, otherwise I can only regrettably help you fill them up in some other ways. Professor Snape showed a creepy smile on his face that made the students shudder. It just so happens that I have a new batch of toads and slugs that need to be dealt with. I knew something was wrong when I saw the first bubble pop up. Fortunately, I reacted quickly enough and remembered that I forgot to put the shrinking figs in it. I quickly added it in, and in the end the potion didn't have any problems. After class, Cologne let out a long sigh, almost unable to help applauding his own wit. Otherwise, his name would definitely be among the students who were sprayed with venom by Professor Snape just now. Bernard also breathed a sigh of relief. As a partner, could he escape when Cologne was sprayed? In the afternoon, there was a herbology class. Everyone thought that they could be healed by the kind and gentle Dean, but unexpectedly, they saw Professor Sprout's expression, which was obviously not very happy. Oh my god, did the school board find out that Professor Dumbledore embezzled public funds to buy candy and cut off the funding supply to Hogwarts? Cologne couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Otherwise, he really couldn't imagine why Professor Sprout, who always had a gentle smile all year round, showed this expression. Don't talk nonsense. Uther also frowned while speaking. Did someone do something excessive to the dean? Facts have proved that although the Badgers don't seem to have a strong presence in the school on weekdays, they are also very efficient in action. When the dean was suspected of being bullied, someone collected relevant information before dinner. It's the new Professor Lockhart. Senior Vivian slapped a book of Lockhart on the table. Well, is there any misunderstanding? After all, what we have collected are speculations, no one has seen it with their own eyes, right? After all, there has been no specific contact with Lockhart, and most students now, especially girls, still have certain fantasies about this new professor. And normally, it is unlikely that a new professor will offend a dean on his first day of work, right? In comparison, they are more willing to believe that it was a disobedient student who did it, and Professor Lockhart may have just happened to catch up. Well, it seems that there is indeed no direct evidence. Vivian thought about it. Although the news she got from Gryffindor, who took the herbology class in the morning, was very pointed, it seemed not strong enough to say that it was definitely done by Professor Lockhart. Although the culprit was not caught, at Adam's suggestion, several of them who knew each other made a big cake for Professor Sprout as a consolation. The cake base was made by everyone, and everyone also used their imagination and creativity to decorate the top, but those who were not good at hands-on could only ask Adam to do it. Everyone couldn't be more satisfied with the final product, especially the fondant decoration in the center of the cake. Professor Sprout surrounded by a group of badgers. Looking at this big cake, everyone couldn't help swallowing their saliva. No, you can't eat it, this is for the dean. Oh my god, Adam, you will definitely make a lot of money even if you only sell fondant cakes in the future. Cedric looked at the small but still lifelike Professor Sprout and couldn't help sighing. Cedric, please don't say such a threat to my happiness in the second half of my life. Bruce touched his belly. Since he became addicted to Adam's food, his dessert intake has increased, but his belly has become smaller. Now this is still fat during the holidays. After thinking it over, Bruce felt that if he could always eat Adam's food, it would be just around the corner to lose weight to a perfect body. Everyone brought the cake to Professor Sprout's office, and the fat grey-haired witch covered her mouth. Oh! God! Is this for me? Of course, Professor Sprout, we hope you can live happily every day. At this moment, Bernard, who was always subject to punishment and handcuffs, behaved very well. Hufflepuff is the most populous college, but Professor Sprout always cares about every Hufflepuff. Because he is worried that Bernard, who comes from a Muggle family, cannot adapt well to Hogwarts, Bernard has also been given special care. Of course, I am very happy every day, especially today. Professor Sprout looked at the cake in front of him, took out his wand and waved it. Let's eat together, I can't finish such a big cake by myself. The fondant in the middle of the cake was retained by Professor Sprout, and the cake below was cut and distributed to everyone. It turned out that they did make the cake too big. Everyone got a piece of cake as big as a faceplate, but there was still a small half left. I will bring these cakes to other professors at dinner later, so that everyone can taste them together. Professor Sprout said as he used magic to push the piece of fondant back, obviously intending to let other professors take a look at it in the evening. While eating the cake, Bernard couldn't help but raise the unsolved mystery. Professor Sprout, we found that you didn't seem very happy on the first day of school. Did you encounter any trouble? Oh? What? The first day of school. Professor Sprout fell into memories. What did she do that day? Oh, by the way, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley's flying car hit the Whomping Willow. She put a splint on the Whomping Willow that day, and then I met that Lockhart. Recalling that person, Professor Sprout couldn't help but frowned. She remembered that child. He liked to attract everyone's attention in class. She knew that he had made good achievements and was really happy for him, but when she really got in touch with him, she found that he seemed, how to say it, Although she had no intention of judging the good or bad of others, the fact that he almost caused her treatment of the Whomping Willow that day did make Professor Sprout a little annoyed. After thinking about this, Professor Sprout also understood why she received such a surprise today. Nothing, it's just that I treated the Whomping Willow that was hit that day, and I felt a little distressed when I saw the broken part of the Whomping Willow. Professor Sprout smiled gently. Chapter 56. Back in the dormitory, Cologne said with a serious face. Now it can be confirmed that it was Harry Potter and Ron Weasley who did it. The two people far away in the Gryffindor Tower suddenly felt a chill on their backs and sneezed more than a dozen times in a row. No, I don't think Professor Sprout meant that. It should be Lockhart. Do you remember the news that Senior Vivian found out? Eugene analyzed calmly. They saw Professor Sprout and Professor Lockhart appear together, and then Professor Lockhart boasted for a while that under his guidance, Professor Sprout completed the treatment of the Whomping Willow. If it was Lockhart who did it, then Professor Sprout would not blame him with her character, but she would not lie either, so she said that she was angry because of the Whomping Willow. Uther nodded. So the breaking of the Whomping Willow is indeed the reason why Professor Sprout is angry, right? Bernard concluded. Eugene hesitated for a moment, thinking that if things continued like this, Harry and Ron's future would be worrying. Considering that the twins had a good relationship with them. Adam left in a hurry just now. Do you know where he went? Well, I don't know. Maybe he had something urgent. I remember he said on the express that Fox didn't like the food of the Chinese phoenix very much, so he made new ones. Did he go to feed Fox? It's possible. Seeing that everyone's attention was diverted, Eugene breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Adam was the key that hides the power of darkness. Show me your true power. Adam, who has made a contract with you, orders you to lift the seal. Because he felt ashamed of this spell, Adam didn't recite it a second time after he was able to put the dark staff away directly, but this time was special. The dark staff was officially summoned. Adam held it high. Xiao Ke and Sibi showed their true bodies and stood on both sides of Adam. Under the feet of the man and the two beasts was a huge magic circle that wrapped them all. At the place where the three sides converged, in the air above their heads, a Clow card was transforming from virtual to real. I didn't expect that the opportunity to condense the love card would come so early. Xiao Ke couldn't help but sigh. He had imagined Adam to be powerful enough, but he didn't expect Adam to be able to condense the love card in just 1 year. Adam's magic power suddenly increased a lot during this holiday. Sibi squinted and recalled. It seems that after that sudden trip, Adam's magic power had a leap when he came back. Well, did Adam secretly eat something delicious without telling us? Xiao Ke nodded and analyzed with a serious face. Sibi's eyelids twitched, and his meat pads moved, but he still didn't do anything to Xiao Ke at such a serious and important moment. Under the expectant gaze, the last point of the love card finally took shape, and the magic circle under his feet dimmed in the blink of an eye. Adam was a little exhausted and supported himself with the dark staff to avoid falling. Adam! Xiao Ke and Sibi stepped forward and let Adam lean on them, so that Adam could free his hands to catch the love card that fell without the support of magic. Is this the love card? Adam remembered that the love card in his memory seemed to be a heart with wings, but the one in Adam's hand now looked more like a kaleidoscope, a bit like a phantom card, but without the gem. Yes, this is your love card, Adam. Do you want to try its effect? Xiao Ke stared at the love card curiously, but was hit on the head by Sibi. Adam just condensed the love card and is very tired. Now I should rest first. It's not that serious. I found that after the love card was condensed, my magic power recovered very quickly. Wait. Adam suddenly remembered something and summoned the Book of Seals. The Clow card at the top was no longer the tree card he put on the top last time, but no card. Xiao Ke and Sibi's hair exploded all over their bodies. Seeing Adam reaching out to Wu Pei, he hurriedly stopped him. Adam, even if you have condensed the love card, you should at least wait until your condition recovers before touching Wu Pei, right? Once Wu Pei backfires, it's no joke. The entire concept of your existence will be erased, and even time cannot be reversed to find your existence. No, the contract tells me that Wu Pei's trial has begun. Don't worry about me, I will be back soon. The moment Adam's finger touched Wu Pei, the light emitted by Wu Pei swallowed Adam, and the Book of Seals fell to the ground with a click, and the Clow cards scattered all over the floor. Xiao and Sibi's pupils shrank into a slit in an instant. Adam was swallowed by Wu Pei. He hasn't brought the claw cards yet. Xiao Ke jumped up and stretched out his claws to pull the claw cards, trying to send the claw cards to Adam. However, the claw cards flew up one by one to avoid Xiao Ke's claws. That's Wu Pei. Do you want them to die? Sibi finally calmed down, and seeing the troublemaker next to him, he couldn't help but slap him again. Adam brought the love cards, that's enough. All we can do is trust him. The space inside Wu Pei. Adam looked at his feet, which was the grey ground, and then looked at the top of his head, which was the grey sky, and the horizon that could not be seen in all directions. Is this the trial of Wu Pei? It was as if the endlessly extended world had no echo. Adam tried, but could not summon the Rod of Darkness, the Book of Seals, or anything else. No card is the opposite of all existence, a nothingness that has nothing. Are you asking me to give an answer to nothingness? Adam tilted his head. I think, therefore I am. The world did not change at all. Speaking of which, why does the nothingness that has nothing have the ground and the sky? Although it is pure color, there should be nothing, right? After the words fell, Adam lost his vision. Of course, it could also be that no card really wiped out the pure world, so he could not see anything. Wow, what a high efficiency! Adam clapped a few times, but there seemed to be no air around him, only the applause transmitted by his body was a little different from usual. So Wu Pei should learn physics. If there was a vacuum around him, he should have exploded by now. But this also shows that he is indeed going through a trial now, instead of facing Wu Pei's annihilation directly. Wu Pei's removal of the scenery of heaven and earth according to what he said also reflects that Wu Pei is paying attention to him. He needs to abide by the rules, and Wu Pei also needs to do so, instead of just taking action like he did to Sakura. This has given Adam enough confidence. The next step is to answer Wu Pei's test. Before he tested the magic of his favorite card, the Book of Seals gave Wu Pei a trial, so the answer to this trial is to find the magic of his favorite card himself. Chapter 57. Before finding the magic of the love card, Adam must at least find his love card first. Adam remembered that he was holding the love card in his hand, and of course the dark staff, but when he came here, both disappeared. Obviously, this was the first question of the cardless card. This was not difficult for Adam. The love card is not something I got from anywhere. It is a claw card condensed by myself. Adam recalled that he had sensed the opportunity to condense the love card several times. The first night he signed the contract with the Book of Seals, he relied on memories and the love between his family to sense the opportunity to condense the love card for the first time. When he was playing with SPI and Xiao Ke, relying on the love between the main pet. The love between friends? The love for the furry? In short, he sensed the opportunity to condense the love card for the second time at that time. Once, when he followed Professor Sprout to study magical plants, Professor Sprout smiled and introduced him to a group of botruckles on the guardian tree. The love between the teacher and the student made him sense the opportunity to condense the love card for the third time. After returning from the Forbidden Forest with everyone that day, they had a long talk that night. Relying on the love between classmates? Or the love between friends? He sensed the opportunity to condense the love card for the fourth time. These were all passive opportunities to sense that he could condense the love card. At that moment, love was so surging in his heart. But can the love card be condensed only when the opportunity is sensed? Love will not disappear just because you don't find it. People who have love are always surrounded by love. As long as you feel it once, you will never ignore that feeling. Adam stretched out his hand. Although he couldn't see it, he knew that he had caught the love card condensed by himself. At the same time, he also understood why his love card was like a kaleidoscope. It was probably because the love he thought of when he condensed the love card was too complicated. When Sakura condensed the love card, she probably only thought about her love for Xiao Lang, so she had a pink girl's heart with wings. After finding the love card, the first question of the cardless was solved, but the next key is how to face nothingness with love? Adam fell into deep thought. Without the wand of darkness in his hand, he could not directly unlock the claw cards to know the magic of the love cards. He had to learn the magic of the love cards by himself. Guessing randomly would be useless. There was no way to list the effects of magic without a range. Adam held the love cards and fell into silence while thinking. Time passed by. How many minutes passed? How many seconds? I don't know. At first, Adam's mind would still be uncontrollably guessing, such as Hancock's sweet fruit, the holy letter L in the death god. Those certainly couldn't be the magic of the love cards. Gradually, Adam couldn't continue to think about it. He could feel the nothingness eroding his heart. At this moment, at this place, light and darkness do not exist, earth, water, wind and fire do not exist, and there is even no concept of time and space. All shapes, images, and qualities do not exist. This is the nothingness that is opposite to everything. Under the erosion of endless nothingness, Adam had no power to resist. Nothingness did not take the initiative to attack, because all his strength and energy had been consumed, so nothingness naturally filled these gaps. Or, nothingness is the name of these gaps. This is the real test of the cardless, which is similar to Sakura's test. Any words are too pale and powerless, and whether you can fight against nothingness can only be proved by actual actions. Vision has long been lost, smell cannot be judged, hearing cannot be verified when you have no strength to make a sound. Taste, is it still there? Probably not. Adam didn't even know if he was still holding the love card. Nothingness eroded to the last point, but could no longer move forward. At the last point in the heart, the thing that could not be eroded by nothingness, was love. Those colorful memories and emotions like a kaleidoscope were so abnormal and dazzling in the grey world, and in turn began to affect the grey. As if it was an illusion, Adam, who had lost all consciousness, seemed to see a girl with a sad face smiling at him. The sense of reality of all existence in the world suddenly returned, and Adam opened his eyes. He held the dark staff in one hand and 2 claw cards in the other. One was the love card he had held before, and the other was the no card. I have conquered the no card. Wait, these 2 claw cards seem to look a bit. Adam! You're back! Before he could take a closer look, Adam was directly pounced to the ground by 2 large cats. Just as he opened his mouth to say something, 2 wet tongues had already licked him. Adam couldn't help but, I had no choice but to shut my mouth. Fortunately, Xiaoke and Sibi are not exactly like lions and leopards in nature, at least there are no barbs on their tongues. How long have I been in the trial? After waiting for Xiaoke and Sibi to calm down, Adam got up and rubbed his cheeks with his hands. When he was licked just now, he unconsciously kept his face tense, and it was almost stiff. Xiaoke and Sibi looked at each other. I don't know. There is no timekeeping tool here. SPI glanced at the claw cards that had been lying on the ground and had not been picked up yet, and stretched out his claws to pull out the time card. It's over. Only 15 minutes. Really? Adam didn't know, but he always felt that he seemed to have been with the no card for more than 15 minutes. Nothingness. Now that I think about it, it's a terrible power. Adam sighed, picked up the love card and the no card and looked at them carefully. It's really different. Although it still looks like a claw card, it is different from the original claw card, which is monotonous in color and only has color at the most critical point. At this time, the card in Adam's hand is dyed with brilliant colors. As for no card, it can be seen that she is wearing a grey dress, her hair and the wings behind her head are silver white, and she has a peaceful smile on her face. When Adam was surprised, no card on the card suddenly opened his eyes, and Adam was so scared that he almost threw no card away. This is... Wu Pei blinked playfully, as if his prank had succeeded. Adam, hello. Xiao Ke jumped up on the spot and stepped back a long way. Wu Pei can actually talk. Don't you know? Adam looked at Xiao Ke curiously, and Xiao Ke immediately replied. Wu Pei is not under my control, how could I know? I haven't even seen Wu Pei before today. Are you the sealed beast? How rude. Of course I can talk. Wu Pei said on the card with his hands on his hips, and then sighed. But I haven't talked to any existence before. Any existence that touches me will be swallowed up in an instant. Except for the magician who created me, and you. Wu Pei looked at Adam. You are very different. Do you remember Clow Reed? Adam was surprised. He had asked Xiao Ke, SPI and the Clow cards about Clow Reed before. However, although Xiao Ke and SPI remembered Clow Reed, they couldn't even remember his appearance, let alone the memory of Clow Reed. The situation of the Clow cards was even worse. They only remembered that their creator was called Clow Reed. I can't remember much about the creator, but there is a deep impression in my mind. Wu Pei looked like he was lost in memories. That was a very complicated guy, more colorful than everything, and more empty than me. Chapter 58. More colorful than everything, and more empty than cardless. Just when Adam was still thinking about the meaning of this sentence, Cardless spread his hands. I actually only met him once, and then I was sealed away. Sorry. It's okay. Cardless pulled the hem of her skirt and turned around in the card. Anyway, I was affected by the magic of nothingness at that time, and I didn't know how long I was sealed. Now I am very satisfied with the life I have freed from the Clow cards. Wait, what Cardless said just now contains a lot of information. Adam pressed his forehead. First of all, how come you are affected by the magic of nothingness? It means literally, it should not be difficult to understand, right? Wu Pei took her previous posture and sad expression. The magic of nothingness is too strong, even I can't escape the influence, immersed in nothingness all day long. The female voice suddenly became ethereal without a trace of life, but it recovered its vitality the next moment. It feels completely different now. Then you just said that you were freed from the Clow card. Oh? When the trial started, the seal of Clow Reed had already lost its effect, so my power went out of control. I didn't notice that Xiao Ke and SPI were about to stone with a changed expression, Wu Pei said as if it was a matter of course. You used the power of love to free me from nothingness, so I belong to you now. Strictly speaking, I should be called Adam Card now. Adam Card. Adam looked at Wu Pei in a daze, and then looked at the love card. The love card has also become an Adam card. Well, the love card is the same. In the world of nothingness, the love card you condensed yourself no longer has any trace of Clow Reed. So, am I going to start transforming the Clow cards into Adam cards now? Adam thought this was a bit too fast. He hadn't learned the magic on the Clow cards yet. And shouldn't there be a new seal wand to transform the Clow cards? Doesn't this depend on you? Is someone forcing you? Wu Pei tilted his head, a trace of emptiness flashed in his eyes. If that's the case, you can tell me, my fighting power should still be quite high. You are a Clow card that can destroy the world, okay? Don't make such a horrible thing sound so light. And what do you mean by saying that the seal of Clow Reed lost its effect when the trial began? Xiao Ke rushed over. Aren't you the sealed beast? Why are you asking me about this? That sentence is literal. I don't know if it was Adam's illusion, Wu Pei's attitude towards Xiao Ke didn't seem to be as gentle as towards him. However, after being reminded by Xiao Ke, Adam also found the focus before being distracted by the Adam card. What if I don't pass the trial? Then, the infinitely expanding nothingness will probably swallow up this world. Yet. Wu Pei pointed his index finger at his lower lip and said after thinking for a while, and nodded to confirm at the end. Is Kurolido so ruthless? Adam couldn't help smacking his lips. Or, Adam, you can think of it as him predicting that you will definitely pass the test. SPI said comfortingly. Anyway, there is no way to find him to confirm, so don't think too much. SPI, when you comfort Adam, go over a little. Xiao Ke suddenly spoke up and pushed Sibi. What? Your shaking legs are making my waist numb. Shut up. Meow. Looking at Xiao Ke and Sibi fighting in a ball, Wu Pei seemed to have a question mark on his head. I always feel that the sealed beast is not so smart than she thought. Adam was silent for a while and felt that what Sibi said made sense. Anyway, only Kurolido himself knew what was going on, so he shouldn't think too much. At this time, Adam discovered that the Clow cards were scattered all over the ground. Just as he squatted down to pick them up, the Clow cards on the ground flew into the sealed book one by one, and the sealed book floated to Adam's palm and fell. What is this? Probably, it's the love card. When Xiao Ke and Sibi were also confused, Wu Pei spoke. I am just guessing based on the brief contact before. The power of the love card seems to be around you all the time. The power of the love card? Adam himself didn't feel any extra magic around him, or he didn't know what the effect of his love card was now. According to Wu Pei, this seems to be a permanent magic card that doesn't need to be activated. Are you kidding me? Uther is the descendant of the pharaoh. Without dwelling on this matter for the time being, Adam looked at Wu Pei and hesitated. Well, do you want to enter the sealed book? Now Wu Pei seems to be able to move freely on the card surface. Will he feel lonely when he is locked in the sealed book? It doesn't matter. I don't mind resting alone. Then, see you next time. Wu Pei smiled happily, and then slowly closed his eyes, as if he was in the sealed state, but the corners of his mouth were still smiling. Oh my god, I can hardly imagine that it was the terrible Wu Pei. This time, after the sealed book was put away by Adam, Zyok couldn't help but speak. Is that personality too, a little healthy? I think it should be the influence of love cards. Sibi looked at Adam and guessed. Well, it's very likely. Zyok nodded. Okay, you two should change back too. Adam looked at Xiao Ke and Si Bai and couldn't help sighing. Who would have thought that condensing a love card would lead to so many things? Forget it, let's think about the problem at hand first. What to eat tonight? In order to ensure that he was safe enough to condense the love card without being disturbed, Adam deliberately came to the room of requirement. After coming out, it was a long way to walk back to the dormitory. It would be time for dinner soon after reaching the dormitory. So Adam simply didn't go back to the dormitory first, and went directly to the nearby principal's office to play with Fox, and it wouldn't be too late to meet up with everyone at dinner time. At dinner, the air pressure around the 5 people in the dormitory gathered together was a little low. In the teacher's seat, Lockhart was holding Professor Sprout's cake and talking excitedly, which made the professors in the entire teacher's seat look unhappy. Have you heard? This afternoon, Lockhart was taught a lesson by a cage of Cornish elves he brought to the classroom. Uther lowered his voice to Adam, who had just joined them. And the test paper he gave in class had nothing to do with defense against the dark arts. It was all about his novels, and the part related to his personal preferences. It felt worse than last year's defense against the dark arts class. Cologne continued to denounce angrily. At least the textbooks selected by Professor Quirrell were normal, and reading from the books was better than Lockhart's class. He feels like a liar. How dare he? Eugene looked at the teacher's seat with wide eyes. Lockhart was laughing and picking up a table knife to cut the fondant of Professor Sprout and the Badgers. Chapter 59. Oh, of course, this shows that you are very popular with students, right? My fans often give me such gifts. Last time, the fondant on the cake could dance. When Professor Dumbledore saw Lockhart pick up the knife, he frowned and silently moved his hand to the Elder Wand. However, before he could make a move, Lockhart's knife had already cut it quickly. It doesn't matter. Control the magic and use the repair to repair it. Just as Professor Dumbledore was thinking this, the cut fondant suddenly changed slightly. The group of badger-shaped fondant decorations suddenly turned into green spheres in the twisting, and each one was growing rapidly. Professor Sprout, who was still immersed in shock and sadness, was stunned. Why do these spheres look so familiar, a bit like Chinese biting cabbage? The whole process of change was not long. In less than 3 seconds, the first Chinese biting cabbage had grown to mature size and opened its mouth. The professors sitting next to Lockhart couldn't help but step back a little, but Lockhart, who was immersed in sharing how delicious the cake his fans gave him, didn't notice this. In order to make the action of cutting the fondant in the shape of Professor Sprout less deliberate, Lockhart deliberately didn't look at the cake when he moved the knife, so that he could use the excuse of not seeing it to excuse himself, but now he has paid the price for this behavior. He discovered that the flower cards could turn into Chinese biting cabbage because of greenhouse number 3. Come to think of it, who said that the flowers of magical plants are not flowers? And the flowers of Chinese biting cabbage are actually the mouth with sharp teeth. Adam was even a little curious about how they pollinated, but after thinking about it carefully, he chose to ignore this question. I have to tell you with regret that your Professor Lockhart will have to stay in the hospital wing for at least half a month before his nose grows back, so. Using the magic wand to pull up the curtains all the way, Professor Snape, who turned around with his cloak at the podium, looked at the students below and pulled the corners of his mouth. Adam guessed that Professor Snape was probably like him, trying to control himself from laughing. Now, throw the garbage on your desk aside and look ahead. Professor Snape waved his magic wand, and the projection cloth in front of the classroom fell down. After class, Bernard packed up his notes and picked up his bag and sighed. Professor Snape is really amazing. Why doesn't he continue to teach us defense against the dark arts? I remember Cedric mentioned that Professor Snape always wanted to be the defense against the dark arts professor when he was talking about the legend of the defense against the dark arts class. Probably because Professor Snape's ability in potions is too irreplaceable. Adam said while sorting out the notes in his shorthand feather pen. As for concurrent teaching, it's okay for several professors to take turns teaching like now, but it's too scary for a professor to teach 2 courses. Even if 2 colleges in a grade can take classes together, there are 7 grades and 4 colleges. A professor of a compulsory course originally has 14 large classes a week, but 2 courses means 28 large classes. Who can bear this? Speaking of which, Adam, you are also amazing. You can make a woohoo, and repaired Professor Sprout's fondant. Professor Sprout was in a good mood and gave him a large piece of cake. Professor Dumbledore, who was shown off, didn't expect to see 2 Fox when he returned to the office. After a closer look, he found that one of them was fondant, so he was shown off again. The old headmaster, who tried to ask for a bite of the fondant version of Fox but failed, thought of the delicious cake he had just eaten, and suddenly he felt greedy from the tip of his tongue and hungry from the side of his stomach. He began to calculate how big the fondant of the headmaster and the 4 deans should be ordered when he asked Adam to order a banquet next time. It should be okay for him to eat his own fondant at that time, right? Although many people hope that Lockhart can stay in the hospital wing, Madame Pomfrey's professionalism is unquestionable. Lockhart returned to his post in less than half a month. Adam and the others also had to welcome their first defense against the dark arts class taught by Lockhart. Classmates, I'm glad to see you all. Lockhart's brilliant smile was a little bit unbearable when he saw Adam, and his nose and bones felt phantom pain, but he still maintained his smile that won the Wizard Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award 5 times. Ahem, let me introduce myself belatedly first. Because of a small accident, I have to trouble my colleagues to take my place to teach a few classes for you. But I believe that you should have a certain understanding of me in these classes, right? Lockhart rubbed his hands and looked around, but found that there was no work of his on everyone's desk. I remember that your textbook this year is my work, where is the book? The students looked at each other for a while, and then looked at Lockhart. Professor Lockhart, you didn't inform us that you were teaching today, so we didn't bring it. What? Lockhart's lips moved. This class was his first class after returning, and he really didn't know about it. It took Lockhart a while to find his voice again. How did you take classes during this period? Would the professors who helped him with his classes use his defense against the dark arts class to teach their own subjects? The professors used projectors and blackboards to teach us the contents of magical defense theory. The students answered. Oh, well, it's not bad, it's also a book of some level, but it's too boring. Lockhart racked his brains but couldn't remember what the book Magic Defense Theory said. The time at Hogwarts was too long ago for him, but it didn't matter, he didn't use that book as a textbook. Believe me, everyone will be able to learn knowledge while having fun next. Lockhart was somewhat glad that he brought his own books. He picked up a book Breaking Up with the Female Ghost and looked down with the same smile on his face as on the cover. Is there anyone who volunteered to play the female ghost of Wan Lun? Chapter 60. Dumbledore's brain must be marinated with sugar. Can't he hire a normal person to be the defense against the dark arts professor? I'll ask my dad to fire that idiot. Draco walked past Adam and his followers, cursing, but it seemed that the other party didn't notice them at all. Looking at his back, Adam sighed sympathetically. Poor kid. No matter what Draco originally thought about going up to perform, the result of being on the same stage with Lockhart was that all the positive and highlight scenes belonged to the other party, while Draco, who played the Wan Lun ghost, was forced to wail and flee. Seriously, is our next defense against the dark arts class going to be like this? Cologne's face was full of discomfort. I'm afraid so, unless... Uther glanced at Adam. Unless Adam sent him to the hospital wing again, but it was obviously impossible. The first time was because Lockhart himself went too far. If it happened again, the professors would not let it go. In Hogwarts, he is not the only one who has the same idea as Cologne. If you compare yourself with others, you will die. If you compare goods, you will throw them away. After having been a substitute teacher for a dark magic master, a dueling champion, a transfiguration expert, and a living encyclopedia of magical plants and animals, even the most loyal fans of Lockhart cannot say that Professor Lockhart teaches well. Professor Lockhart knows so many things, it is understandable that he is not very good at teaching. If you are not good at teaching, then don't come to be a professor. Hearing such arguments, Adam couldn't help but start thinking. He took Lockhart offline for half a month, and it seemed that he had maintained Lockhart's image in the hearts of fans to a certain extent. What do you like about Lockhart? One weekend, Adam interviewed several students who had been standing firm and defending Professor Lockhart in the common room with this question. Professor Lockhart is really talented. If you read his works carefully, you will know that it is impossible to write so well if you don't experience it yourself. His adventures are very cool. He is simply a living legend. I believe that Professor Lockhart is just not good at speaking, and his strength is still very strong. Professor Lockhart's smile is really charming. Well, apart from the small number of fans who are fans of his looks, the vast majority of people who still firmly believe in Lockhart are basically attracted by his works. As we all know, a person's memory cannot be photoshopped, so the extremely real experiences written in the novel must be true. Well, this inference cannot be said to have a big logical problem. Before Adam came to this world, he heard that a certain author wrote spy novels that were too real and turned out to be a spy. But this world not only has logic, but also magic. So how to defeat magic? The famous Oriental Chi magic master, Dad, once said. Oh no. It should be. Use magic to defeat magic. Once again came to the room of requirement, this time Adam asked for a room that was convenient for one person to create. Pushing open the door, the room of requirement turned into a brightly lit study room. Pulling out a chair and sitting down, Adam summoned a card with a book with a star symbol on the card face and placed it on the desk. In his other hand, a dark staff emerged. Release the seal. Without too many special effects, the card body, that is, the book on the card face, appeared on the table. The magic of the card can turn the story written on the card body into reality, including those fictional things. Because the writing state must be maintained when the magic is activated, the materialized things will disappear after the magic is cancelled, so Adam has only summoned the card once before to familiarize himself with each Clow card, and he never uses it at ordinary times, but it is very appropriate to use this Clow card now. Glancing at the alarm clock on the desk, Lockhart was about to start his performance. Adam opened the original card and picked up the quill in the book. Doesn't Professor Lockhart like to write novels? Why not appreciate my work in person today? After all, this is a story written for you. No need to dip in ink. The tip of the quill swished across the paper, and Lockhart's classroom also changed slightly silently. Hiss! Ron shrank his neck and turned his head to look at Harry. Don't you feel a little cold? Maybe the temperature has dropped. Harry was a little listless. Remember when they drove a flying car to Hogwarts at the beginning of the school year? Although he was not expelled or deducted points for this, he still couldn't escape the detention. He was in the detention at Lockhart's place for the past 2 days. He was completely replaced by Ron. Hart spent the whole night writing fan letters. He still hasn't recovered after so many days. Perhaps because of this, Lockhart, who has always been keen on calling Harry to perform on the same stage with him and secretly riding on Harry's popularity, rarely called another classmate to perform with him. Today we are going to recreate the important scene of me expelling the one lone female ghost. Everyone must observe carefully and pay attention to how I did it. After saying that, Lockhart showed a bright smile, posed the posture he had done countless times, turned his head and looked at the child named Neville. Don't be afraid, just do it as written in my book. Lockhart's smile froze on his face. And the female ghost, who was almost face to face with him, slowly showed a smile on her expressionless face. Adam had never seen a female ghost in this world. Based on the description he had read in the book, he naturally wrote the female ghost as a ghost nun or Chu Renmei, but in fact it was much more terrifying than a real female ghost. Therefore, Lockhart, who had never seen a real female ghost, felt his heart stop for a few seconds when he saw the female ghost with black eye circles and white pupils grinning all the way to the roots of her ears, revealing her uneven black teeth. Oh my! Harry, look! This guy's acting skills have improved today. Ron was a little excited when he saw this scene, and pushed Harry's arm. He looks like he has seen a female ghost. Harry looked up at the podium, and it was obvious that Lockhart's acting skills had improved a lot. Facing Neville, who looked timid, he showed an extremely terrified look. Why didn't he see him so devoted when performing with him before? Did Lockhart deliberately disgust him? It was obvious that Ron was not the only one who found Lockhart abnormal today, especially those students who had always firmly believed in Lockhart's level looked at Lockhart expectantly. Is Professor Lockhart finally going to do it for real today? There's a female ghost. A sharp and distorted scream burst out from Lockhart's mouth, and while screaming, Lockhart suddenly jumped up half a body height, which frightened Neville. From Lockhart's perspective, the female ghost's black and wet hair slowly floated up, raised her hands, flashed in place, and when she appeared again, she was a little closer to him. Ah! Chapter 61. Since the first time he fainted in class, Lockhart was a little afraid to perform in class, and his image in the eyes of students collapsed. After all, he couldn't explain why he fainted in class. He couldn't say that he was scared by the female ghost. If he hadn't boasted before that the minor injury was nothing to him who had experienced many battles, he could have attributed it to the sequelae of the previous injury. In fact, Lockhart seriously suspected that he was ambushed, but he couldn't find evidence, and he couldn't ask other people for help directly. He did tentatively ask his former dean, Professor Flitwick, how to deal with a female ghost, but Professor Flitwick knew what he wanted to do very well, and smiled and told him that he was experienced enough, and then he didn't want to listen to his next boasting and left directly. For the first time, Lockhart felt that he had shot himself in the foot. "Classmates, let's do this class together." Lockhart looked at the students below, and his smile could no longer be maintained. "Recite my works and feel how I fought against those evil creatures during my adventures." "What is this guy doing?" Bernard had a question mark on his face, but the people around him could not give him an answer. Adam, the only one who knew what happened, was controlling the shorthand quill to write on the body of the card. "What are you waiting for?" Looking at the doubtful and skeptical eyes of his classmates, Lockhart smiled and raised his hand. "No clue? Then let me pick a paragraph for you." He picked up the first book from a Slytherin student's desk in the first row and flipped through it. "Wandering with Werewolves, Chapter 2, how about starting from here?" There was no way, no matter how outrageous Lockhart was, he was still a professor, everyone could only pick up the book and turn to the place he said and start reading. "In that forest, under the moonlight, I saw that creature." "Stop! Stop! Wait a minute!" Lockhart hurriedly raised his hand to stop the student's recitation. As everyone stopped, the forest and the moon in front of Lockhart disappeared, making him relieved. "Stop reading." Ahem. That story just now was too scary, let's change to another chapter." "How about chapter 27? The students looked at each other for a while, and a fan of Lockhart hesitated and said. "But, Professor Lockhart, chapter 27 is the end of the story, you and the werewolf have separated." "Yes. That's right. But Miss Marcel, you have to know, it is very important for you to feel the beauty of life." Lockhart nodded seriously. "But you just said, you want us to feel how you fight against those evil creatures during your adventure." Did I say that?" Lockhart smiled and tried to fool around with it, but the students nodded honestly. "Oh, well, okay then." I don't know if it was an illusion, Eugene felt that Lockhart's smile looked like crying for a moment. Lockhart moved a chair to sit behind the podium and smiled at everyone with difficulty. "Let's start." There was no way. He really didn't know how to take the defense against the dark arts class, and he couldn't just skip the class. Compared to actually participating in the show with the monsters, Lockhart felt that sitting here and watching shouldn't be so scary. And maybe he wouldn't see it if he closed his eyes? Lockhart took a deep breath and closed his eyes. "In that forest, under the moonlight, I saw that creature." The moment the students' voices rang out, Lockhart's eyelids jumped. Anyway, the professor closed his eyes. How could he, a professor who had just taught them a few classes, still hear whether he had spoken or not? With this idea in mind, many people closed their mouths directly, but more of them lip-synced without making any sound, so as to prevent Lockhart from suddenly opening his eyes. "Professor Lockhart seems to be listening very attentively," Hannah muttered when she was about to read the climax. Ernie, who was sitting behind her, couldn't help but complain. "Why do I feel like he's more like asleep?" Adam, who wasn't worried about Lockhart opening his eyes, laughed. When everyone read the part about the werewolf's transformation at the full moon in chapter 4, Lockhart had already fainted, but could Adam let him go so easily? So Lockhart is now continuing to love the werewolf in his dream. If it weren't for the national characteristics, Adam would have planned to let the werewolf kick him in the dream for fear that this guy would be too happy. After class, Lockhart, who finally woke up from his nightmare, watched everyone with a pale smile. The classmate left the classroom, and after a long while, he stood up from the chair that was still a little wet with trembling legs. "What did you do to Lockhart this time?" They didn't know what happened in other classes, but they saw Lockhart's abnormality in this class. When they returned to the dormitory, they curiously pulled Adam to the small sofa and surrounded him. "How can you slander someone's innocence out of thin air? I read a whole class with a book in both hands." Adam slapped the table and said confidently. Yes, we believe you." Bernard nodded. "Then guess what Lockhart experienced in this class?" "My guess may not be accurate." "It's okay, we just listen to the story." Cologne remembered that he still had a bag of buttermelon seeds that he hadn't finished eating, so he quickly took it from the bedside and put it on the table. The 5 people each grabbed a handful. With the sound of crack 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 of cracking melon seeds, Adam shared his guess with everyone, which immediately attracted a sigh. So what he wrote was not his experience. Eugene suddenly realized, then frowned. Then how did he write so vividly? Based on his knowledge, some of the plots and details in Lockhart's novels are consistent with reality, and it is difficult to know these things without personal experience. He can know it because he has read the letters sent back by his parents over and over again since he was a child, so he can pay attention to those details. Maybe he heard it from others. Cologne guessed, but then he lost interest in those things and looked at Adam with shining eyes. Adam, what on earth did you show Lockhart that scared him like that? Let me see it. Bernard's eyes lit up, and then he turned to look at Adam. Are you interested? Adam looked at everyone. Cologne and Bernard were obviously very interested. Usher was slightly interested. Eugene was not interested at first, but after thinking about it, he decided to experience it together. Well, let's watch a horror movie together before dinner. He closed the curtains, turned off the lights, and asked everyone to sit on the small sofa. Adam transformed 5 buckets of popcorn and placed them on the round table, and 5 cups of Coke, then summoned the brand and took out the shorthand quill. Are you all ready? Yet. So. The ring is on. Chapter 62. After a movie, Adam turned on the lamp and turned around to see the different expressions of the 4 people. Eugene and Colin's faces were exactly the same, and they were devastated. Eugene could barely maintain a proper sitting posture, but Colin had already shrunk into the small sofa. Bernard looked scared and excited, probably because Adam had developed the attributes of a horror movie lover. Uther surprised Adam the most, and his face was full of unsatisfied. This form of curse is quite innovative. The videotape of You Will Definitely Die After 7 days after watching it. I think many people will be curious and want to watch it. Uther commented while eating popcorn, and drank a sip of Coke at the end. He had finished his while watching the movie, and now he was eating colognes. This little greedy ghost almost didn't touch the Coke and popcorn this time, which was really rare. That night, 2 figures slowly climbed out of the bed one after another, and looked at each other under the moonlight. Go to the bathroom. Together. Walking to the door, Colin paused as he grasped the doorknob. Although he went to the bathroom with Eugene, both of them were very scared and still felt insecure. Looking back at the 3 people on the bed, Bernard seemed to be quite scared too, and Adam always felt that he might scare them when they went to the bathroom, so it was better to find Uther. Poke. Poke. Hey. Uther opened his sleepy eyes and was startled to see the 2 people standing by the bed, propping up his upper body. What are you doing? Uther, do you want to go to the bathroom? Ah? I don't want to. Uther grabbed a handful of hair and was about to lie back, but suddenly Eugene and Colin grabbed his arms on each side. No, you do. Uther. Wait, let me put on my pajamas. After going to the bathroom, Eugene and Colin fled back to the bed. After covering himself with the quilt, Cologne heaved a sigh of relief, and then he felt a little embarrassed along the way, and couldn't help but glare at Adam in the next bed. As a result, he saw Adam lying on his side, staring at him with his eyes wide open. Cologne. At that moment, Cologne's expression was frightened and even a little distorted, but fortunately he remembered that it was the middle of the night, so he covered his mouth with his hand to block the scream, and then slowly shrank into the quilt. Seeing this, Adam smiled slightly, gathered Xiaoke and Si Bai, and closed his eyes. Hiding in the quilt, right? I'll show you the grudge another day. Uther, who was extremely sleepy, yawned and walked at the end, looking at Adam who was sleeping soundly surrounded by cats and shook his head. What a sin! The horror story that day had a far-reaching impact. At least the Forbidden Forest trip originally scheduled for mid-October was postponed again and again, and Halloween was about to come. Cologne and Eugene said they were already trying to adjust, and they would only need another half a month at most. Perhaps it was to go to the Forbidden Forest for adventure as soon as possible, or perhaps it was because of the vague conscience that played a role. After that day, Lockhart was the only one who continued to enjoy the horror feast carefully prepared by Adam. And the plot became more and more exciting as the course progressed, and even scenes that had never appeared in Lockhart's works appeared. This unexpected stimulation made Lockhart, who thought he was immune to these horror stories because he was used to them, moved and fainted. This time, in addition to gloating, Cologne looked at Lockhart with a bit of sympathy. Last year's Halloween encountered a troll invasion. I hope this year will be smoother. Uther sighed on the way to the auditorium, and Adam's footsteps paused slightly. It's been so long since the start of the school year. At first, he focused on the love card to subdue the cardless card, and then he focused on making fun of Lockhart. Today, he has been busy in the kitchen. He seems to have forgotten about the basilisk and the Horcrux. But fortunately, at least there were no moles during the dinner. Except for the first-year students, the Hufflepuffs were surprised to find that there were many pumpkin desserts on the table, which were the same as last year. Many of them were holiday limited and could not be bought in Adam's store. In addition, the most attractive thing in the entire hall should be the Professor Dumbledore-shaped fondant on the classroom seat. The fondant, which is about 20 inches high, restores the appearance of Professor Dumbledore sleeping peacefully, and even the bow on the beard and the half-moon glasses on the bridge of the nose are exactly the same. After the banquet, Professor Dumbledore took the lead in dividing the fondant. "No, I'm full enough. You should enjoy it yourself." Professor McGonagall looked at the Professor Dumbledore who handed over Professor Dumbledore's left hand was silent for a moment, then he declined. Professor Dumbledore looked at Professor Snape again, and Professor Snape stood up and left. The line of sight continued to shift, and one professor after another left before making eye contact with Professor Dumbledore, leaving only Professor Lockhart, who was caught by Professor Dumbledore because he was a step slower. "I remember you didn't eat much just now, Lockhart, share some with me." Professor Dumbledore had a loving smile on his face. "Don't worry, I specifically confirmed with Adam that there is no magical protection on the fondant this time." It would have been better if Professor Dumbledore didn't mention this, but Lockhart's face became even uglier when he mentioned it. Lockhart had either seen werewolves or female ghosts for so many days before, so of course he couldn't get up his appetite for today's festive delicacies. Now Professor Dumbledore was teasing him with the culprit who had caused him to stay in the hospital for half a month before. However, eating Dumbledore with Dumbledore seems to be a good gimmick. Maybe he can use this to make the headlines for the first time in a long time? Thinking of this, Lockhart suppressed his dissatisfaction and forced a smile. Thanks to his experience during this period, Lockhart's ability to fake a smile has become more and more advanced. "Of course, Professor Dumbledore, I'm happy to." The sudden scream interrupted Lockhart's words. Mixed with a burst of commotion, Professor Dumbledore stood up and strode towards the direction of the sound. Lockhart's face was a little ugly, but he hurriedly followed. That was the corridor outside the auditorium leading to the main hall. The open space between the two windows was now surrounded by many classmates. When Professor Dumbledore arrived, Professor McGonagall had already controlled the situation. When he came, the witch stepped forward with a serious expression. "Albus." Professor Dumbledore followed Professor McGonagall's gaze and looked at the side wall, where two twisted lines of words were written with some liquid. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Those who are enemies of the heir, beware." At the bottom of the wall, Mrs. Norris, who was petrified and held by the heartbroken Filch. With a few thoughts flashing in his eyes, Professor Dumbledore calmly comforted Professor McGonagall. "Don't worry, everyone. I will find out the situation." The sense of security brought by the greatest wizard of this century is amazing. When Professor Dumbledore said this, Adam could feel that the classmates around him were relieved. Chapter 63. Because Filch pointed out that this incident must have been done by Harry Potter, Professor Dumbledore had to take them all away, and although the people left behind dispersed, they also started to discuss what had just happened. Hogwarts Chamber of Secrets. There really is such a thing. Eugene frowned. "What is that?" Uther looked at him curiously. "A legend about Hogwarts. You should all know that the founders of Hogwarts, the original 4 deans, had different requirements for selecting students." "I know this. I learned about the history of magic last semester." The Sorting Hat also continued the ideas of the 4 founders to sort students into houses. Cologne took the initiative to answer. "Well, so in the legend, the 4 founders had a fierce argument over the students' bloodline. Salazar Slytherin only wanted to recruit pure-blood students, while the other 3 opposed this. Only recruiting pure-blood students? Isn't this difficult to do?" Uther was a little surprised. Even in their Egyptian wizarding world, there were almost no families left who had always maintained pure blood. The few families that remained, could only be said to be very anthropomorphic. This was inevitable. There were only a few pure-blood wizards, and they rarely had many children. After a few intermarriages, they were all close relatives. Egypt was so big, and it was still like this, not to mention that Britain was so small, and there would be even fewer real pure-blood families. Perhaps the three founders have also considered this aspect. Eugene was not particularly clear about this, so he could only guess. He then continued to talk about the legend of the secret chamber. It is said that Salazar Slytherin left the school after the quarrel. Before leaving school, Salazar Slytherin built a secret chamber in the castle that only he knew how to enter. At the same time, he also predicted that only his own heir could open it, and the heir would release a ferocious monster living in it to eliminate all Muggle-born students in the school. Wow! Everyone looked at the person who spoke, and it was Bernard, the only one of the five who could be said to be pure Muggle-born. I saw a light flashing in his eyes that was very familiar to the other four. What would that ferocious monster be? It's really curious. What do you want to do? In the end, no one asked this knowing question, but guessed along with Bernard's words. Mrs. Norris was petrified. I guess it could be Medusa. Cologne made a reasonable guess, and Eugene refuted it. But Medusa couldn't have lived so long. According to legend, it should have lived for 1,000 years. But that premises that the monster that petrified Mrs. Norris was really left by Slytherin, right? Cologne put forward his own opinion. Maybe the murderer this time just borrowed the name of the secret chamber legend. He is not an heir at all, and the monster that petrified Mrs. Norris was not left by Slytherin. What you said makes sense, but how can a Medusa sneak into Hogwarts? Eugene's intuition told him that the murderer was really related to the legend, but he had no evidence. Last year, even a giant monster managed to sneak into Hogwarts just on this day last year. Cologne felt that this was a bit far-fetched. Professor Dumbledore would never allow Hogwarts to be invaded again and again, but he had a new idea. Maybe it wasn't a monster at all, but a wizard who used some dark magic. That kind of complete petrification state cannot be achieved by total petrification, and it is obviously some extremely dangerous magic. Anyway, that should be a dangerous guy. Bernard concluded. Why don't we? No. The other four said in unison. Bernard, suppress your curiosity, okay? Adam sighed, stretched out his hand to grab Bernard's shoulder and made him look at him. Whether that thing is Medusa, a dark wizard, or something else, it is a very dangerous and deadly thing. If you are really bored, I will accompany you to the Forbidden Forest. Yes, let's go to the Forbidden Forest. Cologne nodded in agreement. Although he was still a little bit traumatized by the horror movie for the first time, for the safety of Bernard's life, as long as Adam did not turn a dry well into the Forbidden Forest, he felt that he could still hold on. Although the Forbidden Forest is dangerous, they have experienced the most dangerous situation. It should not be more dangerous than accidentally entering the nest of the eight-eyed giant spider. The thing that caused the petrification this time, the unknown, is the most terrifying and dangerous. I know, I won't mess around. Bernard sighed with some regret after breaking away from Adam's hand. Perhaps this is why Bernard was sorted into Hufflepuff instead of Gryffindor. He really listened to the advice and didn't go to explore the monster in the Chamber of Secrets. On the contrary, Adam, who had persuaded Bernard before, set foot on the Chamber of Secrets on this day. If I catch the basilisk in advance, will Harry be unable to defeat Voldemort due to lack of experience? Should I use 2 cards to leave him 1? Thinking of this, Adam suddenly came to his senses. No, at my current growth rate, why would Voldemort let Harry fight? Although he still had some difficulty using the cards without cards, the earth, water, wind, and fire claw cards can be used normally, and even the light and dark cards can last for a few minutes. At this rate, Voldemort will come in 2 years. Adam will probably be able to let him choose a way to die. Why did Harry have to go through all kinds of hardships, losing his classmates, professors, godfather, and himself? Just to follow the trajectory of the original novel? Although the original novel is a great and touching story, from the perspective of the story, is the victory of a fight to the death a beautiful and worthwhile ending? Adam did a quick calculation and found that if the original novel was followed, the casualties of his roommates were unknown, but at least half of the clients he had developed over the past year would be gone, the investment target would die, and 2 of his lovely and respectable professors would be gone. Oh, and Ares's little lovebird Hedwig would also be sacrificed. I don't know how they are getting along now. This is only based on the current data. Adam's losses will only be greater, not smaller. Hiss. Adjusting the abacus in his mind, Adam took a breath. No, he doesn't accept this future. Change. Must change. It's better to kill Voldemort directly. As for the prophecy, let's talk about it later. If it doesn't work, we can think of a way. Maybe it will work if Harry catches Voldemort first and Adam kills him. I just want to ask you whether Voldemort died in Harry's hands. Arriving at the girls' bathroom on the second floor, Adam gently waved the dark wand, and the magic of the ingot locked the bathroom door. The blockade of the ingot is all round, and walls, windows, etc. are all inaccessible. The locked room can only be opened with the correct key, the sealing wand in the key state, otherwise it can only be opened by removing the magic. As for other methods, at least the unlocking spell can't open it. Adam has tried it. Walking to the faucet with the snake mark, Adam summoned the card. Chapter 64. Adam didn't know Parseltongue. He could have asked Harry to say it once and then imitate it with the sound card, but that was a bit too deliberate, not to mention that the serpent language that opened the Chamber of Secrets was almost obviously related to the Chamber of Secrets. So he decided to use the Clow card's own way. The card of the card was a woman in ancient Chinese costume walking through a circular plane. The magic effect could make people temporarily lose their body to pass through tangible obstacles, such as walls. Using the card, Adam easily entered the pipe of the Chamber of Secrets. The smell of corpse decay spread in the pipe, and Adam felt that breathing became difficult almost as soon as he landed. Ugh! He quickly summoned his wand and covered his head with a bubble head spell. Adam finally took a few deep breaths. This serpent monster is really unhygienic. I'll have to brush its teeth and give it a bath when the time comes. Adam stretched out his hand, and a little light flew out from his palm. It was the magic of the light card, illuminating the dark pipe. There were bones all over the pipe, and it looked like almost all of them came from mice. There were also some slightly larger bones, but they were too fragmented to tell what kind of animal they were. Did the basilisk live for 1,000 years by eating these? Maybe there were some insects like cockroaches that didn't leave bones, and they could grow so big. Tisk, pitiful, it had lived for 1,000 years without having a good meal. There were some messy traces in the pile of bones, which should have been left by the basilisk when it passed through. Adam also found dozens of basilisk skins shed. This is a good thing, put it away. Using the magic of the card bubble to wash the snake skin, fold it and put it in the bag, Adam heard the sound of an object dragging on the ground. Did the basilisk find him coming? Or did the diary control Ginny to come over? Adam slowly dealt with the last snake skin, and when he turned around, he just met the basilisk that came out of the pipe. What a powerful magic! Looking into the amber vertical pupils, Adam could not help but sigh as he felt the shield's protective magic being triggered. The basilisk, which had originally discovered an intruder entering its nest on the way to being summoned and was planning to have a feast on the way, was visibly stunned, because it was surprised to find that the little thing in front of it did not die after staring at it. How could this be possible? Roar! With a roar that normal snakes could not make, the basilisk suddenly launched an attack forward. It was not able to hunt only by sight. Bang! The basilisk felt as if it had hit a high wall, and immediately retreated a little dizzy. Shaking his head and looking forward, the human cub had a shield in his hand that was almost as tall as the cub, and the decoration made of gold and rubies shone under the illumination of the surrounding light sources. A trace of doubt flashed in the basilisk's eyes. Both the human cub and the shield were too small for it. How could they block its attack just now? With a little more caution in his heart, the basilisk slowly moved its body and tried to attack from another direction. Adam held up the shield and looked at the basilisk and fell into thought. How can he defeat the basilisk without leaving too serious injuries to it? At the same time, at a pipe exit of Hogwarts, Ginny, who was controlled by Voldemort's soul fragment, was pacing back and forth in a somewhat irritable manner. When he passed by just now, he heard Myrtle crying that she couldn't enter the women's bathroom on the second floor. After rushing there, he found that it was blocked by a powerful magic, so he hurried here to summon the basilisk. Logically speaking, the basilisk should have come here long ago after hearing the order. Did Dumbledore really discover the secret there? Impossible. Dumbledore is not a Parseltongue. Even thinking this way, Voldemort's soul fragment was getting more and more unsure. When he was created, Voldemort was not a scary name, and was not even well known. Others still called him Tom Riddle. Although he knew his future achievements in his communication with Ginny, the Dumbledore he had to face also became the greatest wizard of this century in the future, and he had not even regained his past power. No, he had to go. The basilisk was just a useful tool. If it was gone, it was gone. If he fell into Dumbledore's hands, it would be a loss. Having made up his mind, Voldemort's soul fragment controlled Ginny to say a few words in Parseltongue, and then turned around and left decisively. The basilisk was in a difficult situation at this time, but it was still fighting. It was turned into a long and thin one by Adam with a small card and held in his hand, and its strength became smaller, but its ferocity was not as good as it should be. But it never slowed down, biting Adam's finger with its teeth filled with deadly venom, but it couldn't break through the defense of the shield. Adam was also a little helpless. He was sure that the basilisk could understand human words and responded to his words of persuasion, but unfortunately it was not positive. What kind of magic potion did Salazar Slytherin give the basilisk? Or did he use some magic contract to restrain it? If it really can't be subdued, the only way is to collect the basilisk, put it in an opaque container as a collection, and feed it a mouse from time to time. How about using 2 cards to see if the basilisk in the parallel world will surrender? Let's kill this basilisk and see how the stew tastes. The basilisk is afraid of the crowing of the rooster, so why not try to make a dragon and a phoenix fight? However, just when Adam thought of this, the basilisk in his hand suddenly stopped struggling. Can the basilisk read minds? Impossible. Even if it can, his protective magic is still on. Adam curiously pinched the basilisk and slid it to his eyes. He found that the basilisk seemed to have no strength and did not resist at all. Adam looked carefully for a while and found that the basilisk's eyes had lost their highlights, as if it had become a salted fish that had lost its dreams. What happened? Adam put the basilisk back in his palm and poked it with his fingers a few times. The basilisk finally responded. It raised its head and hissed at Adam a few times, as if trying to negotiate with Adam. Adam. At this time, the importance of mastering multiple foreign languages is reflected, but the question is where to learn snake language? He remembered that Professor Dumbledore could understand Parseltongue. Forget it, since the other party's attitude has softened, let's not eat it first and keep it in a jar. Adam had already quickly mastered the magic of the small card through the shrinking spell. Relying on the Philosopher's Stone as a power source, there is no need to worry that the basilisk will suddenly return to its original size at some point. So Adam safely placed the shrunken basilisk in a glass candy jar, then wrapped it with layers of black gauze and left 2 holes on the lid for breathing. After doing all this, Adam returned to the bathroom, first used the phantom card to hide his figure, then unblocked the ingot card, ran to an abandoned classroom with no one to restore his figure, and returned to the dormitory with a natural look on his face. No one knew that when Adam came back from this trip, he had a monster hidden in the secret room in his pocket. Chapter 65. The basilisk has been dealt with, and of course the diary must be dealt with as well, which is much easier to deal with than the basilisk. First, put a shield on Ginny, and then let her hand over the diary when she is awake. Ginny, who has been controlled, obviously knows that the diary is not a good thing, and handed the diary to Adam without hesitation. Can you keep the diary a secret for me? Ginny's face was a little pale, because she was scared, or perhaps because the diary absorbed some of her vitality. I don't want my brothers to worry, and, Mrs. Norris. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Adam has established a reliable image of a big brother with Ginny through George and Fred. Hearing this, he showed a smile that matched everyone's imagination of Hufflepuff characteristics, and handed over a honey-flavored candy. But I still recommend you to go to Madame Pomfrey to see, just say that you can't sleep because of the legend of the Chamber of Secrets recently. Thank you, I'll go. Ginny took the candy and breathed a sigh of relief, then looked at Adam. What will you do with this diary? Of course, destroy it, but this thing doesn't seem to be able to be destroyed by conventional means. I want to experiment. That's good. You must be careful and don't be controlled. Ginny gave a few more instructions before leaving, but since Adam could help her resist the control of the diary, it seemed that there would be no problem, so she was still very relieved when she left. Well, let me see. How durable is the legendary Horcrux? Adam looked at the diary in his hand and showed a curious expression. Unlike Harry and the others who used the basilisk venom back and forth, Adam had plenty of strength and means. Once again came to the familiar room of requirement, Adam put the diary on the table, prepared a notebook next to it, and the shorthand quill pen was now standing on the notebook, ready to move. Swish, swish, swish. As Adam's mind moved, the title of the experimental record was written on the notebook. The test of various characteristics of Horcruxes began, the first experiment physical resistance. Horcruxes of non-living things can show the characteristics of being unable to be destroyed by physical means to a certain extent, but the physical damage received in that case is not great, so Adam is still a little interested in whether Horcruxes are really not affected by physical damage. Adam summoned the Force card and looked at the diary eagerly. For the next period of time, Voldemort's Horcruxes spent time in Adam's inhumane magic experiments. The diary became thinner and thinner, but the notebook recording the experimental process became thicker and thicker, because Adam was crazy enough to add diagrams of the experimental results. The experiment proved that most Clow cards can be effective against Horcruxes, and some are even very effective, such as the Gan card. Although it took a little more magic power than transforming ordinary items, a page of the diary was indeed transformed into a cloud cake, along with the soul power on it. In the end, Adam still didn't make up his mind to eat the cloud cake, and fed it to the basilisk. The results showed that the basilisk seemed to accept all kinds of human food well. During the experiment, Voldemort's soul fragments in the Horcrux appeared with handwriting more than once, from begging to threatening, and then from threatening to begging. Adam ignored them all. Until recently, perhaps he gave up struggling, or perhaps he was not strong enough. Anyway, no words appeared in the diary again. This made Adam a little disappointed. The lack of reaction from the tortured object greatly reduced his emotional feedback. Of course, his main purpose was to conduct magic exploration seriously and increase magic knowledge. Yeah, that's right. The experiment on the Horcrux did increase Adam's magic power a lot, and also provided Adam with the opportunity to use most of the Clow cards for a round. Looking at the Horcruxes with only 4 pieces of paper left inside except for the cover, and the soul power on them was so weak that it was almost indistinguishable, Adam's heart rarely surged with a bit of shame. There are still 4 cards left, which is such a waste. I have to think about other experimental projects. However, before Adam can come up with a new method, the Quidditch competition of this school year has begun. At 11 o'clock in the morning, Adam and his roommates went to the Quidditch field together. Adam, why are you always elusive recently? There are always a few hours every week when you can't find you in love. On the way, Uther teased Adam, who was late and met up with everyone on time. I don't have the idea of falling in love yet. Adam shrugged. Most of his attention was now attracted by the beauty of magic. He was usually with his family and roommates. And the professor's socializing has taken up the rest of their attention, so it's hard to leave a spot for them. They didn't continue the topic of love, which was just a joke. After meeting up with more classmates, they started discussing today's game. It's Gryffindor vs. Slytherin again. Last year, Harry Potter was absent from the final battle, which made Gryffindor lose to Slytherin. This year, their captain seems to be holding his breath. Cedric's relationship with Oliver is pretty good, or in other words, his relationship with most of the classmates who can make friends normally in the school is above the good baseline. Obviously, he has a lot of first-hand information. It's just that Malfoy has joined Slytherin this year. Old Malfoy spent a lot of money to equip each team member with a Nimbus 2001. The outcome is still unknown. A Nimbus 2001 for each person. They are really rich. Ernie sighed a little sourly and couldn't help but take a sip of the honey water. It must be Adam's food that can heal people's hearts. Adam, who can earn a Quidditch team a year with food that heals people's hearts, was lost in thought as he looked at the 2 teams that were ready on the field. As we all know, Harry almost always encounters problems in Quidditch matches every year. What is the problem this year? When Harry was once again chased by the Bludgers and his classmates began to angrily denounce Slytherin for repeating the same old tricks, Adam clapped his hands. I remembered it. What did you remember? Eugene, who did not join in the denunciation of Slytherin, turned to look at Adam. I remembered something I forgot before. Adam rubbed his face. How could he forget the house elf of the Malfoy family? What was the name of the house elf that was later free and then sacrificed? Gollum? Yoda? Oh. It seems to be Dobby. Now the basilisk has a good life of 3 full meals a day, occasional snacks, and a bath once a week. The Horcrux diary is still alive, but Dobby doesn't know it yet. It still thinks that old Malfoy wants to harm Harry Potter. It was also the reason why Harry had to drive a flying car to school at the beginning of the school year. It blocked the magic of platform 9 3/4 and made Harry miss the departure time. Thinking about it this way, it seems that the magic of house elves is also worth studying. Adam forgot what he was thinking about just now due to the inertia of long-term magic research, and began to think about academic issues instead. In the air in front of him, the kind Dobby was trying to knock Harry off the flying broomstick 500 feet high with a high-speed flying quaffle for his safety. Chapter 66. Everyone's cheers brought Adam's attention back to reality from the house elves. Seeing Harry, who had caught the golden snitch, fall from the sky to the muddy ground, Adam suddenly remembered something and hurriedly ran to the field with the crowd. Is it coming? The second year, and even the greatest invention of the wizarding world in the entire 7 works. Mixed in with the Gryffindors surrounding Harry, Adam was satisfied to see Gilderoy Lockhart squeezed over with an excited look on his face. Leave it to me, don't worry, I have enough experience to deal with this kind of thing. No, wait. Don't. Let me go to the hospital wing. Ignoring the noise in his ears, Adam carefully observed Lockhart, staring at the trajectory of the wand swinging while memorizing every syllable he uttered. As the spell took effect, Harry's arm drooped down like a rubber hose-style character in an animation. The bones of his entire arm were pulled out. Bone dislocating spell. With this spell, what else do we need to do with the whole chicken and fish bone removal techniques? This is called magic to improve life. I wonder if the fruit core can be removed with this magic. Haha. The spell went wrong, but Lockhart still maintained a smile of I succeeded and stood up awkwardly. Sometimes yes, this does happen occasionally, but the broken bones are fine. Isn't it? Okay, Harry, let's go to the hospital wing. Lockhart didn't dare to look at Harry, who was full of anger and resentment, and looked at his friends around him. Mr. Weasley, Miss Granger, please accompany Harry. Although they were very angry about Lockhart's behavior, it was obvious that Harry's safety was more important now. The two glared at Lockhart and quickly helped Harry up, rushing to the hospital wing with ease. Ouch! In a panic, Lockhart was stepped on hard by someone. The protagonist of the game left the stage early, and the handshakes and other activities ended hastily. Adam said goodbye to his friends again and came to an abandoned classroom alone. As a house elf, Dobby was elusive and had no fixed range of action. In order to find him, Adam had to use some special methods. For example, divination. There are many ways to divination in the Clow cards, such as using the dream cards to predict dreams, using the water cards to do water divination, using the tree cards to summon yarrow divination, etc., but the former divination is uncontrollable, and the latter requires a certain professional foundation. The most suitable divination method for Adam is to use the Clow cards directly for divination. The Clow cards that integrate the tarot cards are also a prop that can be used for divination. Shuffle the cards with your left hand, then divide the deck into 3 parts and mix them together. Note that you can only shuffle the Clow cards with your left hand. Xiao Ke and Sibi sat at the 2 corners of the table and told Adam the specific process of divination. After shuffling, draw 10 cards according to your preference and arrange them in a 3x3 diamond array. Put the first card in the opposite corner, the second card in the corner facing you, the third card in the lower left, and the fourth card in the lower right. According to the 2, Adam arranged the Clow cards and closed his eyes. The Clow cards created by Clow read, please answer my question and tell me the location of Dobby, the house elf. The magic power slowly flowed on the Clow cards in front of him. Adam opened his eyes and turned over the Clow card at the top of the card array in front of him. Sibi said in a deep voice. It's the ground card. The first card is a hint, indicating that the opponent's position is related to the ground. To be honest, it's a bit tasteless. After all, what he wants to find is a position. The ground card at most means that the opponent is not in the sky or in the water. Then there were 3 Clow cards in the middle of the card array. These 3 Clow cards pointed to the specific content of the divination. Adam turned them over from left to right. Pop, Gan, small. Xiao Ke tilted his head. What place is this? Dobby is hiding in the kitchen of Hogwarts. These 3 Clow cards are connected together. Adam can hardly find a second answer except the kitchen of Hogwarts. It seems that these are enough, but Adam still went through the process and turned over the Clow card at the bottom right corner of the card array. This Clow card pointed to the next goal of the divination object. Shield. Guardian? Or Savior? All of them make sense. Because he had a certain understanding of Dobby, Adam's process of answering the divination results was very smooth. He put away the Clow cards and immediately set off for the kitchen, which was the place Adam was most familiar with in Hogwarts besides the dormitory and Hufflepuff common room. Inside Mr. Reed, how can I help you? As soon as he entered the kitchen, a passing house elf greeted Adam familiarly. Blue, I want to know if there are any foreign house elves in the kitchen recently. After closing the door behind him, Adam naturally looked around and whispered to the house elf named Blue. Blue also lowered his voice when he saw this. Foreign house elf? Yes, Mr. Reed, there is indeed a house elf who came to Hogwarts, and its little master is now studying in Hogwarts. Blue looked a little dissatisfied, thinking that this was a question of their workability, but his dissatisfaction did not mainly come from this. That guy is so lazy. He hasn't helped his little master clean up a few times since he came to Hogwarts. His master should. Okay, Blue, I know you have always been the most diligent one among you. Adam stopped Blue from complaining. Blue raised his head proudly after hearing Adam's praise, and Adam took the opportunity to continue asking. Where is the house elf now? Well, he just went out and just came back. He should be resting over at the oak barrel. Hearing this, Adam slammed the dark staff in his hand on the ground, and a huge magic circle wrapped the entire kitchen in it. A somewhat illusory big lock slowly disappeared in the air. Mr. Reed. Blue looked at Adam with some doubts. Take me to the oak barrel where he is. Okay. Although he didn't know what Adam was doing, Blue still chose to believe this student who had gained control of the entire kitchen and all the house elves several times. Hogwarts house elves all live in oak barrels, most of which are from recent years, with the logos of Butterbeer and the 3 broomsticks on them. Dobby's oak barrel was squeezed in the corner. It was an old oak barrel with rusty iron rings on it. Adam walked to the oak barrel and heard a low snoring coming from it. Perhaps the previous act of casting a spell on the wandering ball was also a big burden for Dobby. A lazy guy only deserves to live in such an oak barrel. Look at this guy, he is still sleeping now. Blue explained to Adam indignantly. Without responding to Blue, Adam reached out to the oak barrel, and the magic circle was formed in his palm in the blink of an eye. The sealing magic applied to the entire kitchen was limited to the oak barrel, and then the oak barrel was floated up and floated to Adam's side. Mr. Reed, where are you taking it? Blue couldn't help but say when he saw this scene. Adam glanced at Dobby who was still sleeping soundly in the oak barrel beside him, and smiled slightly. I have something to ask him. Chapter 67. The naive house elf did not doubt Adam's words at all, and let Adam take Dobby away easily. Then Adam used the illusion card to bring Dobby to the room of requirement openly. Wake up! Tap the oak barrel with the dark staff, and Dobby poked his head out of the oak barrel, his eyes lit up. It woke up on the way, but was locked in the oak barrel by the ingot card and could not leave. Now it can come out, doesn't it mean? However, the next moment, Dobby still stayed in the same place. Don't try, the seal range has only expanded from the oak barrel to this room. After a few seconds of thinking, Dobby got out of the oak barrel and bowed to Adam tremblingly. Dear sir, what do you want to see Dobby for? The diary is now in my hands. Adam looked at Dobby and took out the diary with only 4 pages left. After seeing this, Dobby's big eyes like light bulbs widened even more. So, you don't have to protect Harry Potter anymore. Adam felt a little complicated when he said this. After all, Dobby's protection had only had a counter effect so far. Oh my god! Harry Potter is saved! Dobby jumped a few times excitedly, and then suddenly cried out. Dobby doesn't have to disobey his master anymore. Bad Dobby! Dobby is an incompetent house elf. As he spoke, Dobby slammed his head against the floor. Adam was stunned. Only then did he remember that Dobby's release was actually a bit of a coincidence. Under the current circumstances, old Malfoy probably wouldn't come to Hogwarts. In other words, Dobby would continue to work for the Malfoy family for nothing. But the problem didn't seem to be big. After all, he didn't think about liberating oppressed people around the world, let alone liberating house elves, and he didn't have any idea about Dobby. Dobby was indeed very brave, and he did protect Harry when he sacrificed himself, but to be honest, Adam didn't like him. His enthusiasm for Harry came entirely from the story of Harry as the savior. He betrayed his loyal master for the sake of an image in the story, and after the betrayal, he just talked to himself and used his own way to protect the savior he imagined, which seemed a bit absurd to Adam. It is undeniable that Dobby and Harry established a deep friendship in the later period, but in the beginning, Dobby was like a bastard fan who wanted to protect his brother. When Dobby calmed down, Adam reminded him to find Harry and explain everything he had done before, and then let him go. If Harry felt it was necessary, he might as well find a way to free Dobby himself. As for learning the magic of house elves, there are too many house elves in Hogwarts, and they live next to the Hufflepuff dormitory. I believe they are happy to help Adam. Since Dobby was solved, there are no abnormal safety hazards in the castle, and Adam and his school life have returned to normal. Adam spent half a month to thoroughly study the bone-removing spell that Lockhart accidentally came up with, and transformed it into a magic circle version. This kind of magic has a certain degree of similarity with the card-removing spell, but it is more targeted. Under the temptation of delicious food, Adam's research progress is unprecedentedly fast. Now this spell can no longer be simply called the bone-removing spell. It can remove bones, scales, shrimp threads, snail shells, fruit cores, rotten leaves, solids and liquids, and everything that the caster considers to be impurities. Yes, the effect of this magic is also very idealistic. For example, it is completely possible to consider cartilage not as impurities when releasing it, so the cartilage will be retained. The same is true for fish heads and tail fins, and the fish will not become strange after deboning and affect the appetite. For this spell, Uther looked at it and said it was amazing, and Cologne even shouted that it was wonderful. Bernard took action and asked for a plate of roasted chicken legs from the kitchen. Try it now. Adam stretched out his hand and wiped the air above the chicken legs. All the bones of the chicken legs disappeared, but the cartilage parts of the head and tail were left. Adam, you can even go down in history with this magic. Cologne said excitedly while gnawing on a chicken leg. Braised carp. Eugene was also very excited. Although he liked braised carp very much, the bright red color really affected his ability to pick on the nits. Before, he could only try braised hairtail, but now he could finally do it without any taboos. Adam was also thinking deeply, thinking about what new dishes to serve next. Just before Hufflepuff ushered in a wave of carnival, Lockhart jumped out to make trouble again. Perhaps he was dissatisfied with himself for no longer being the focus of the crowd after seeing that the castle had been stable for so long, or perhaps Adam had been when he was too busy studying spells to pay attention to him. He had confidence. In any case, Lockhart still created the dueling club. What made Adam even more unbelievable was that Professor Dumbledore actually agreed Harry would never believe that the old headmaster didn't know that Hogwarts was safe now. The headmaster's control over the entire castle was quite terrifying. Portraits, ghosts, and even house elves were all the headmaster's eyes and ears, not to mention the various protective magics that might have other functions. So why did Professor Dumbledore let Lockhart mess around here? With doubts, Adam followed the crowd to the so-called dueling club. It was called a dueling club, but in fact it was just a tidying up of the auditorium. The long tables that originally belonged to the 4 colleges were moved away, and a fancy dueling platform was built in the center. It did look a bit formal, but it looked more like a stage with the background of various floral decorations. At this much anticipated moment, Gilderoy Lockhart walked onto the stage. He wore a purple robe today, shining brightly under the candlelight of hundreds of candles in the air, and Professor Snape followed him. His face was so gloomy that Adam recalled the time when he drew Harry in the lottery. Walking to the center of the stage with a joyful step, Lockhart waved his hand to let everyone be quiet, and then shouted loudly. Come around, come around. Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear my voice? Ah! Great! Lockhart had his signature smile on his face. It's like this, Professor Dumbledore allowed me to open this small duel club to fully train everyone in case you need to defend yourself one day and take the way I have used countless times to protect yourself. For details on this, please see my published works. After advertising his own works, Lockhart raised his hand and motioned everyone to look at Professor Snape beside him. Let me introduce my assistant, Professor Snape, who I invited to come and instruct you all. In addition, he also recommended a young assistant to me and refused to provide me with more information. What an interesting little surprise, isn't it? Chapter 68. Hearing Lockhart's words, Adam suddenly had a bad feeling for some reason. Especially Professor Snape's face actually looked a little better at this time, and he even glanced at him. I have to say that Lockhart is really something. After Adam had no time to pay attention to him, he managed to win back some of his original die-hard fans with his words, and this remark still attracted a wave of applause. Thank you for your encouragement. Now let's invite that little assistant up, how about it? Lockhart winked at Professor Snape mischievously, as if he had a good relationship with Professor Snape. Professor Snape's face tightened for a moment, and then he showed a somewhat gloomy smile. Adam Reed. Adam. Me? No. No one told me that there would be an extra show today. Just when Adam was stunned, Professor Snape looked at him again. Come here. Don't be shy. Relax. Adam, where are you? Lockhart had no doubts at all. Although he had suspected that someone was plotting against him, he had never doubted these students. After all, how could a student have any powerful skills? For this reason, when Professor Snape said that he wanted a student to replace him to practice and demonstrate with him, he agreed without hesitation, and even felt that it was just what he wanted. A student is always easier to deal with than a professor. Under everyone's gaze, Adam silently walked onto the duel stage and looked at Professor Snape beside him. Relax. Professor Snape's expression did not change. He raised his hand and gently patted Adam's shoulder, his voice almost inaudible. Use the spell I taught you. You know which one it is. Adam's mouth twitched. You taught me 2 spells in total, one is the Golden Bell and the other is the Shadowless spell. The difference between these 2 spells is a bit big. Can you tell me which one to use? Seeing Adam walking up to the duel stage, Lockhart's expression was a little unnatural. The painful memory of being bitten into the hospital wing by the Chinese biting cabbage suddenly came to his mind. He didn't call the roll in class, and the previous class process was quite bumpy, so he still couldn't match the students' names with the specific students. He didn't know who Adam was until he saw Adam on the stage. However, Lockhart quickly adjusted his mentality. Although the previous experience was painful, it was a magic arranged in advance after all, and it didn't prove that the student's strength was very strong. Just take this opportunity. Come here, kid, I won't hurt you, you just need to relax and follow the process. Lockhart waved to Adam with a smile on his face. Professor Snape patted Adam's shoulder and went down, leaving Adam and Lockhart on the duel stage. First, Mr. Reed and I went to the 2 sides of the duel arena, and then we bowed. Yes, that's right. After bowing, Lockhart turned his wand in his hand a few times and slowly prepared to speak. Except. Hanging bell. Tisk. Wow. Amid the amazed eyes of the students, Adam looked at Lockhart, who was hanging upside down in the air with an innocent face. Professor, can't you make a move after bowing? Lockhart's face turned red, probably because of the congestion in his brain. Anyway, he was silent for a few seconds before speaking. Yes, of course I know this, I just want to demonstrate to everyone your offensive intention is too obvious, of course I can't fall for such a trick in a real duel. Adam nodded and glanced at Professor Snape, who had just made a tisk sound in the chaos. He seemed to have guessed wrong. But is the Shadowless sword a bit too much? What if the bloodthorns scare the students? In comparison, he still prefers the scripted killing that he prepared for Lockhart before, which kills without bloodshed. Lockhart struggled twice in the air, and began to tell everyone about his previous experience of dueling with dark wizards, and the process of defeating a former duel champion, occasionally casting a spell to himself or other spells that Adam had never heard of. Finally, Lockhart, whose eyes had begun to turn black, smiled awkwardly at Adam. Mr. Reed, I want to test how well you have learned the counter spell to this spell. Of course, I am not incapable of this spell. I have seen this trick several times during my journey. I haven't learned the counter spell to this spell yet, Professor. Adam suddenly spoke, with the innocence of a pure little badger on his face. So you should come down by yourself. Lockhart's face turned redder, even a little purple. Yeah. I'll come down right now. Hey. Lockhart fluttered in the air like a fish on the hook, and smiled weakly at his classmates. My wand seems to have some problems. Can anyone help me contact Pomfrey, people? Lockhart fainted with his head tilted in the shocked eyes of his classmates, and even foam came out of his mouth. Save him. Quiet. Professor Snape walked onto the stage and waved his wand, and Lockhart fell down with a click. Adam seemed to hear a sound similar to a broken bone, and hoped that the dueling stage would be fine. Glancing at Lockhart, Professor Snape was in a good mood. He glanced at the students below and said in a long voice. It seems that your Professor Lockhart has suffered a serious injury again. I'm afraid the matter of the dueling club will have to be postponed, so go back. No. Wait a minute. I'm fine. Under everyone's shocked gazes, Professor Snape's eyelids twitched. Lockhart struggled to get up, his face still a little red, but he still had a hard smile. It's okay, it was just a small accident just now. I'm not injured, I'm fine. Professor Lockhart. Adam spoke with mixed feelings. This is a true warrior. He rarely brought a little respect in his tone. Why don't you go to the hospital wing to have a look? Look at your red eyes and the blood flowing from your nostrils. Don't die on this duel stage. Don't worry, I'm fine, I'm fine. I have encountered much more difficult situations than this more than once during my travels. I mean the wand failed. Lockhart held the wand and tried to do some fancy moves, but the wand flew out of his hand halfway. He ran over and picked up the wand without changing his expression. Ahem, that was just a demonstration. The next part is the formal duel. What we are going to show you is a real formal duel. Let's set the process first. Lockhart didn't want to experience the feeling of being hung upside down again, so he said. We will bow first, and then use Expelliarmus together. You should know this spell, right? Lockhart breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Adam nodded. In order not to be hit by any strange spells again, he just thought of this method of everyone using the same spell. But Expelliarmus is one of the few spells he can use skillfully. If Adam says he doesn't know it, that would be bad. He can't compete with Adam in using the Oblivion spell, right? Chapter 69. Bowing to each other again on the dueling stage, Lockhart was already full of confidence. He admitted that he had underestimated his opponent before, and the opponent's strange little spells were also quite good. But when he got serious, a student tutored by a potion professor, could he be stronger than him? Expelliarmus. A red light flashed across the center of the dueling stage, and hit Lockhart all the way to the wall behind him. Lockhart's eyes widened, his lips trembling, and he stuck to the wall for at least 3 seconds before slowly sliding down the wall to the ground, slapping forward and falling down, forming a posture of sitting on the ground. Lockhart's wand spun in the air and flew into Adam's hand. At this time, Adam suddenly seemed to remember something and added. Expelliarmus. Classmates. Cool. So cool. Bernard's eyes lit up and he was the first to start applauding. Then Adam's other roommates came to their senses and started to applaud, then the Hufflepuffs, then the other colleges. Pa 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 pa. After 3 crisp and short applause, Professor Snape walked to the center of the duel stage. It was a wonderful duel. Now, unfortunately, your Professor Lockhart has suffered a serious injury again. Specially putting an emphasis on the word again, Professor Snape glanced at Lockhart, as if to confirm that the other party would not suddenly get up again this time. After 3 seconds, Professor Snape looked away as if nothing had happened. As for the dueling club. When he said this, Professor Snape's eyes happened to sweep over Harry, and he paused for a moment before continuing naturally. I'll take your Professor Lockhart to the hospital wing first, and when I come back, I'll divide you into groups, and you'll practice in pairs. The students were excited all of a sudden. Although Professor Lockhart had played poorly just now, Adam played well. Who would want to play the poor side? And many of them had the opportunity to cast spells on others for the first time, so they were very excited. During the time between my departure and my return, you'd better behave yourself and make sure that there won't be any accidents here, that I don't want to see, otherwise. Seeing the excitement of his classmates, Professor Snape smiled and calmed everyone down, then waved his wand at Professor Lockhart. Zombie floating. Professor Snape left the auditorium with Professor Lockhart, who was lying dead, and the auditorium suddenly became lively after a few seconds. Oh my God, Adam, that was so cool. Putting away his wand, Adam returned to his friends and was surrounded by everyone. What spell did you use before? I don't think it was taught in class. That was taught to me by Professor Snape, and it seems to be a spell he invented himself. Adam looked at Colin and explained. Invented it yourself? Oh my God! Cologne was amazed. Can Expelliarmus beat people like that? How did you do it? Uther was very curious about the Expelliarmus, and Adam smiled slightly. Practice makes perfect. It was the strike card, he added the strike card. Because the attack method of the strike card is to release a laser-like attack, which looks very similar to many spells of wizards, Adam specially studied it, and unexpectedly it can be perfectly compatible with most spells, such as the Expelliarmus just now. Do you think it is just magic damage? In fact, this spell also comes with physical impact on the teeth. I didn't expect, Adam, that you can master the silent spell so early, it's amazing. Cedric sighed. About the silent spell, it actually depends on talent. Adam scratched his head, not feeling how shocking his ability to perform the silent spell was. In the wizarding world, silent spells are just a more advanced spell-casting technique. Many wizards know it. Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape are proficient in this technique, but they don't use it very often. At most, they just use it to do things like drawing curtains. Wizards who can cast without a wand are really awesome. The wand is equivalent to a regulator of magic. Except for the extremely low spell mastery in Africa due to poverty, but the average person can cast without a wand, no one in the world who can cast without a wand is simple, including their beloved Professor Dumbledore. Next, everyone will fight in groups. Who do you plan to team up with? Ah? Didn't Professor Snape say that he would assign it? Professor Snape probably doesn't have time to group everyone. He probably won't object if we find teammates ourselves. Well, that's true. But think about it, in Asia it always feels a bit dangerous when we fight. Cologne touched his chin and analyzed calmly. Then I'll be in a group with Adam. Bernard volunteered, but then looked at Adam and said. But Adam, don't knock me out too. Don't worry, I'll be your sparring partner. While the two were talking, Uther found Cedric as a teammate, and Ernie found Hannah. Then I'll be in a group with Eugene. Cologne stood on tiptoe and patted Eugene's shoulder. Eugene, have you grown taller in the past few months? Really? Isn't it normal for us to grow taller at our age? That makes sense. Cologne nodded and thought about the difference in diet between him and Eugene. Could eating more fish make you taller? Then shouldn't he eat more fish? Anyway, Adam has developed a spell to remove fish bones. Well, he should eat more fish next. Professor Snape came back soon, and surprisingly, he was followed by Lockhart with a splint on his neck. Seeing Lockhart again, Adam couldn't help but gasp. What does it mean to be strong in body and weak in spirit? Oh no, what does it mean to be strong in spirit? What does it mean to be indomitable? What does it mean to be dedicated to one's job? Those young handsome guys who bought hot searches even when they had a cold or a sore skin in their previous lives should learn from this. He really made me cry. Ahem, Madame Pomfrey said that I only had some minor injuries. It seems that the adventures over the years have given me a good body. Ahem. The pain from coughing made Lockhart almost unable to maintain his smile. Seeing that Adam seemed to be going to the dueling stage again, he hurriedly said. I will not continue to demonstrate to you. Professor Snape told me before that he would divide you into groups. Why don't we do it together? Professor Snape nodded silently, first walked towards Gryffindor, separated Harry and then pulled Draco to form a group with the two. It was Lockhart who divided them into groups. He saw that Adam didn't want to go this way. After knowing that they had divided themselves into groups, he quickly agreed and quickly fled from their surroundings. After the division, Lockhart climbed onto the dueling stage with his sick body and looked at the classmates and said. What are you waiting for? It's time to start. As soon as the voice fell, the whole hall was filled with the sound of spells, and Professor Snape frowned. Stop! From this sound, we can see the majesty that Professor Snape has accumulated in his daily life. The spells stopped abruptly, and then the wailing sound suddenly became very prominent. I really doubt whether you usually bring your brains to the spell class or did you forget where you put your brains before going to class, so you just stuffed a flobberworm into your empty heads. Professor Snape gritted his teeth and gave emergency treatment to the students who were injured because of their own or their teammates' mistakes in casting spells, and then sent them to the medical wing. After returning, Professor Snape, with a gloomy face, took Harry and Draco to the dueling stage and asked them to demonstrate for everyone. But I can't remove your weapons. Harry's face was full of resistance. It's okay, Mr. Potter. Professor Snape's gloomy face finally showed some joy, and he seemed to enjoy Harry's current situation. You can use any magic you know. Chapter 70. Any magic he knows? Does the levitation charm count? After hearing what Professor Snape said, Harry felt his eyes go dark, but Professor Snape didn't care about that. He took them to the dueling arena and waved his cloak to the side. You can bow to each other. Draco bowed to Harry with a malicious smile on his face, raised his hand and cast a curse. Dragon out of the hole. A black snake fell to the ground in the smoke and slowly crawled towards Harry. Harry froze in place, staring at the snake. This seems to be some kind of summoning spell. But what's the use of summoning a snake? Uther touched his chin and tilted his head. He could see that it was a real snake. But even if it was a trained snake, it was just a snake. Ice freezing, fast imprisonment, petrification, any simple spell could solve it. This spell can only bully young wizards who have not learned many spells, but it takes a lot of effort to train snakes not to attack the caster, and it is impossible to train them to lock on to the target and attack, so the actual combat effect is really worrying. Facts have proved that even if the dragon comes out of the hole, it is useless, but it has indeed frightened Harry now. Don't move, let me deal with it. Professor Snape was obviously pleased by Harry's reaction, but he didn't really want Harry to be bitten, so he walked forward while talking slowly. No problem, let me deal with it. Lockhart finally found a chance to show off, so how could he let Professor Snape even if he couldn't even beat the students? It's impossible that he couldn't even beat a snake, right? Lockhart rushed forward in a flash, waved his wand and made a set of extremely complicated movements, and recited a difficult-to-distinguish spell. It's a pity that Lockhart successfully cast a spell, but the attack power of this spell is a bit low. The snake that was hit rolled a few times on the duel stage, stood up and angrily crawled towards Lockhart himself. Lockhart swallowed his saliva in embarrassment and quickly retreated. Okay, I was wrong. This spell can actually be used to deal with some unlearned adult wizards. Uther covered his face and sighed. Professor Snape silently retreated to his original place and put the half-pulled wand back. Being stared at by a snake that looked very poisonous, Lockhart was a little panicked and stopped pretending to be cool. He waved his wand and recited the spell. Disarm you. The poisonous snake that was hit by the red light and fell to the ground fluttered on the ground a few times and soon climbed up again. What kind of monster is this? Lockhart exclaimed at the sight, and Draco spoke silently at this time. It's just an ordinary snake. Professor, are you trying to take away its fangs by using Expelliarmus? Facing Draco's somewhat contemptuous look, Lockhart was extremely angry. He got angry for a while, and then hurriedly said. My wand doesn't seem to have recovered yet, so let's return the stage to Mr. Potter. After that, he hurried down the duel stage. Pa! When he went down the stairs, Lockhart seemed to be tripped by something and fell headfirst to the ground. Adam retracted his hand and looked at the duel stage with concern. So, Mr. Potter, what are you going to do? Professor Snape narrowed his eyes and looked at Harry, who was stared at by the snake again. Harry didn't know if it was his illusion, he always felt that Professor Snape's mood seemed to have become much worse. No one can save him now. Harry watched the snake getting closer and closer to him, and suddenly opened his mouth as if he had an idea. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The smile on Professor Snape's lips disappeared all of a sudden, and his eyes stared at Harry intently. The next moment, he pulled out his wand and turned the snake into a puff of smoke. I'm going to take Professor Lockhart to the hospital wing again. The duel club ends here, and you can go back. Professor Snape waved his wand to float Lockhart up, and said to the young wizards who were still in shock. Lockhart was originally lying on the steps between the duel stage and the floor of the auditorium, groaning, and heard this, as if trying to prove that he didn't need to go to the hospital wing. At this moment, Professor Snape's wand happened to move accidentally, and Lockhart followed it with a 1080-degree roll in the air, and suddenly there was no sound. After dealing with Lockhart, the students were still discussing Harry's actions and were unwilling to leave. Professor Snape narrowed his eyes. I said, you can go back. The young wizards immediately scattered and returned to their respective common rooms. Did you all see it? Cologne exclaimed in a low voice on the way back. Harry just now said to snakes talk. What's wrong with talking to snakes? Adam talks to his cats every day. Bernard pointed at Adam. Adam, meow meow meow. That's different. Cologne was about to say that Adam was just teasing the cats and the cats didn't understand, but then he thought that the two cats seemed to understand. The ability to talk to snakes is very special and rare in the wizarding world. It's an ability called Parseltongue. Eugene took over the conversation to explain for Bernard. Not only can you talk to snakes, Parseltongue can even command snakes to a certain extent, but that's not the point. The point is that Slytherin is a Parseltongue, and Parseltongue can be inherited. So, the heir of Slytherin should also be a Parseltongue. That's right. Bernard looked as if he understood, and then some thoughts flashed in his eyes. The boy who survived a catastrophe, the legendary savior, could he be the heir who opened the Chamber of Secrets? For Bernard, who had been peeking at the case materials handled by his parents since he was a child, it was not impossible for a good person in everyone's eyes to be dirty behind the scenes. Hey, I'm a little hungry after being active for a long time. What should I eat for supper? Hearing Adam's words, Bernard threw the thoughts in his mind out of the window in an instant. Why not eat the tiger skin chicken feet I made last time? Not to mention Adam's dormitory, which started discussing supper dishes halfway. The news that Harry was a Parseltongue quickly spread around the campus, even overshadowing Lockhart's embarrassing incident last night. However, at noon the next day, things suddenly changed. Adam was having lunch in the auditorium, and Ernie came up behind him with a curious look on his face. Adam, who is the heir to the Chamber of Secrets? Hey? Adam raised his head in confusion. The heir of the Chamber of Secrets? How do I know? Oh, don't pretend, Harry said that you have solved all the monsters in the Chamber of Secrets. You must know who the heir of the Chamber of Secrets is, right? Ernie lowered his voice and said. Tell me secretly, I will never tell anyone else. Harry? How did he know? Damn. Dobby. Adam immediately figured out the cause and effect, looked at the little wizards around him who were listening, and his eyelids twitched. I don't believe you. Why do you believe what Harry said? Adam tried to reason with everyone. I think he said it very sincerely. Ernie scratched the back of his head. Is he lying? That's not the case. If Harry showed Parseltongue himself and was mistaken for the heir, it would have nothing to do with Adam, but Adam now said that Harry was lying, which was Adam's slander. In desperation, Adam said. Okay, the heir of the Chamber of Secrets is Mr. Reed. I hope you don't mind having lunch with me. Professor Dumbledore came out from nowhere and said to Adam with a smile. Chapter 71. Of course, Professor Dumbledore. Adam was taken away by Professor Dumbledore, and the interested little wizards around him dispersed in disappointment. So, Adam really solved the monster in the Chamber of Secrets. Cologne's face was 3 parts confused, 3 parts puzzled, and 4 parts enjoyment. Well, he was still eating cornflakes in his mouth. I'm afraid so. If Harry Potter was lying, Adam would have said it just now. Eugene recalled that Adam always couldn't find anyone intermittently before, and said. And if it wasn't true, Professor Dumbledore wouldn't have come just now. Adam actually left us to adventure in the Chamber of Secrets. Bernard looked regretful. I'm afraid that's not an adventure story worth sharing. Recalling the records about the secret rooms in the pyramid, Uther squinted and said, then looked around. Let's go back to the dormitory after breakfast and wait for Adam. It seems that they may not be able to restrain their curiosity and come to ask us in a while. Adam followed Professor Dumbledore to the principal's office. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Sprout were all there. Why didn't you bring Professor Flitwick to play with you? Then Adam saw Harry, who lowered his head and didn't dare to look at him. Adam. Is what Harry said true? Professor Sprout saw Adam coming, hurriedly walked to Adam, took his hand, and looked Adam up and down carefully. Sorry, Adam, I didn't know. It would bring you so much trouble. Harry's voice was not loud to begin with, and it got lower and lower as he spoke. He said it in a hurry to prove his innocence. When he saw everyone going to Adam for verification, he realized the impact of what he said. Adam didn't hear what Harry said. He first wanted to comfort the anxious dean in front of him. Professor Sprout, it's true, but that's all been solved. Oh, yes, our Mr. Reed can even solve the monster in the Chamber of Secrets, and he defeated a professor last night. What else in the world can make him feel afraid? Professor Snape's voice sounded, making Adam want to complain. It was you who took the job of defeating the professor last night, Professor. But he also knew that this was Professor Snape's indirect concern, asking him not to be stubborn and take risks, so he swallowed the complaint that was about to come to his throat. Severus, don't say that. Professor McGonagall was standing next to Harry, and now she walked to Adam. Adam, I don't mean to question whether you are lying, but, what was the monster you solved? I mean, maybe it was some other magical animal, but you just mistook it for. It was a basilisk, Professor. Adam's answer made Professor McGonagall's next words stuck in her throat. Basilisk. Also called the Snake King, its venom can kill a person instantly, and looking into the eyes of a basilisk can kill directly. Professor Snape narrowed his eyes and gave Professor McGonagall a hint, who had not remembered the basilisk for a while. Unlike Little Potter, with his understanding of Adam's character, although this matter sounded as outrageous as Merlin's resurrection, Adam should not talk nonsense casually. But if it was a basilisk, why did the cat just petrify before? So that's it. Mrs. Norris saw the reflection of the basilisk on the knight's armor, so she just petrified. Professor Dumbledore, whose presence had decreased after entering the principal's office, suddenly realized and solved everyone's doubts. Only Harry was still confused. But, there hasn't been a basilisk in Britain for more than 400 years. Professor Sprout was still a little confused. The basilisk has been dormant in the Chamber of Secrets. It really didn't appear in 400 years. It has lived for 1,000 years. Adam explained. But, how did you do it? And how did you know it was a basilisk? Professor McGonagall finally found her voice. And why didn't you tell us, but went to deal with such a terrible thing alone? Professor McGonagall, please let me answer your questions one by one. Adam stretched out his hand and summoned the wand of darkness in the surprised eyes of everyone in the principal's office. First of all, how did I do it? It was with this, the magic prop passed down by my ancestors. Professor Dumbledore's eyes flashed with doubt. How could he not know that Nicholas Flamel had such a magic prop? However, with Adam's explanation, the doubt in Professor Dumbledore's eyes disappeared. It turned out that the ancestors in China. Although the existence of the Clow cards was not concealed, it was also not. After giving a detailed explanation of the Clow cards and using the magic props inherited from his ancestors as a shield for combat power, Adam continued. As for how it was discovered, do you professors know Moaning Myrtle? Professor Dumbledore's eyes flashed. Moaning Myrtle was once his student. Adam explained that he combined the fact that he heard from his classmates that the Chamber of Secrets had been opened, the story of Moaning Myrtle, and the discovery of the spider's corpse in the castle to form a guess the monster in the Chamber of Secrets is a basilisk. How did you guess that? Harry murmured with his eyes wide open. The professors knew the characteristics of the basilisk, but Harry didn't, so Harry couldn't understand how these conditions led to this result. Ignoring Harry's questions, Adam continued. Finally, why didn't I tell the professors? As I said just now, I was just guessing, and I was confident that I could handle it even if I faced a basilisk, so I went by myself. After listening to all the explanations, the professors fell silent. Although the storyline Adam told was a bit outrageous, it seemed that there was nothing wrong with it. So, let's not talk about how you finally defeated the basilisk heroically who opened the Chamber of Secrets. Professor Snape crossed his arms and squinted his eyes. That person must be very familiar with the situation in the Chamber of Secrets. He must have known that there was a basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets and knew how to deal with it. Professor Sprout seemed to understand something, and immediately glared at Professor Snape, reaching out and hugging Adam into his arms. Severus, what do you mean? Knowing that Professor Snape was not sincere, even if he believed that he would habitually say something to himself because of worry and fear, Adam sighed secretly, and then taught Sprout. Professor Dumbledore winked at Professor Dumbledore in the professor's arm, and Professor Dumbledore immediately understood and said, Severus, stop your speculation. We should be vigilant, but we can't suspect a student without reason. As he said that, Professor Dumbledore stood up. Okay, now most of the things seem to be clear. Let Adam and I talk about the remaining details while eating lunch. Everyone, please go back. You may have classes to prepare in the afternoon. Although the professors were not very happy, since Professor Dumbledore said so, they left the principal's office one by one, and Professor McGonagall took Harry with her. Okay, now there are only two of us here. Professor Dumbledore winked at Adam. What do you want to eat for lunch? Why don't you let me do it? Adam waved the dark staff directly, and a plate of hot brownie-flavored pizza appeared on the table. Then he looked at Professor Dumbledore, whose eyes lit up, and said, Professor, what do you want to eat for lunch? Chapter 72. After finishing the last apple cinnamon pie, Professor Dumbledore listened to Adam's story and saw the diary with only 4 pages left. Looking at the pitiful diary, Professor Dumbledore suddenly sighed. Tom, have you ever thought that the Horcrux you created at the cost of killing a life would be so fragile one day? What's wrong, Professor Dumbledore? Nothing, I just thought of something. Professor Dumbledore shook his head and began to answer the questions Adam asked him. This diary should be a Horcrux, an extremely evil black magic prop that can only be made by killing a person, so it can have such a strong magic resistance. At this point, Professor Dumbledore couldn't help but move his eyebrows. In fact, most of the means in this world cannot cause harm to it. Otherwise, Voldemort would not have cut his soul in order to make a Horcrux. It's a pity that Voldemort's Horcrux met Adam. While sighing, Professor Dumbledore suddenly remembered the basilisk. If he remembered correctly, the evil magic of the basilisk was enough to destroy the Horcrux. Is the body of the basilisk still in the Chamber of Secrets? Oh, no, it's not dead yet. It's good that it's not dead, hey. Professor Dumbledore widened his eyes and watched Adam take out a black round container from his bag. A closer look revealed that it was a glass jar wrapped in black cloth. I shrunk the basilisk and caught it. It's in here. Adam said as he pulled open a slit in the gauze and took a look. It's sleeping now. Professor Dumbledore opened his mouth and felt a little confused for a while. Professor, do you want to see it? No. Professor Dumbledore finally sorted out his thoughts. You shrunk the basilisk. Yes, the basilisk's strength has also decreased. Now even the glass jar can hold it tightly. Professor Dumbledore wanted to say that the basilisk's skin has a magic resistance that is almost the same as that of a dragon, but thinking about the magic resistance of the Horcrux is much stronger than that of the basilisk and the dragon, he didn't say anything about this issue. He just looked at the black jar for a while and hesitated. Adam, I have to remind you that it is illegal to keep a basilisk. Professor, I have checked the laws of wizards. It is illegal to breed a basilisk, but it is not illegal to keep a basilisk. Adam blinked at Professor Dumbledore. So as long as I can prove that this basilisk was not bred by me, I will not violate the wizard's law. The laws of the teachers. Okay, you're right. Professor Dumbledore was silent for a moment after a recollection. But raising such a dangerous animal on campus. Professor Dumbledore. This basilisk is already the safest in my hands. Should I let it go? Or should I kill it? Although it once killed a person, it was instructed by the mysterious man, wasn't it? Adam looked at Professor Dumbledore sincerely, trying to awaken Professor Dumbledore's love for teachers and students. Besides that, all it has done since it was born is to sleep in Hogwarts for nearly 1,000 years. It is almost as old as Hogwarts and has witnessed the history of Hogwarts. Looking into Adam's eyes, although legilimency found nothing, Professor Dumbledore could see the pure love for magical animals, which reminded him of an old friend. If the other party was here, he would probably find a way to protect the basilisk. And after all, Adam is just a student, a Hufflepuff, and the heir of Nicholas Flamel. He just saved the school. What bad intentions could he have? Finally, Professor Dumbledore softened his heart. Okay, but you must promise that no student will be injured by the attack of this basilisk, even petrified. Of course I can promise, Professor. Adam smiled and put away the basilisk jar, then looked at Professor Dumbledore. By the way, Professor, I read in the book that although you are not born with Parseltongue, you have learned the language of snakes through acquired learning. Is that right? Professor Dumbledore blinked and understood what Adam wanted to do. But it must be said that this is actually a good idea. At least being able to communicate with the basilisk will only allow Adam to take better care of the basilisk. After a little thought, Professor Dumbledore stretched out his hand, and a book on the bookshelf floated into Professor Dumbledore's hand. This is about snake language and merman language book. I hope you can remember to return it to me after you finish learning it. Of course. Don't tell your classmates what you said in the principal's office today. If they must ask, just say that I asked you to keep it secret. No problem, Professor, but... Adam recalled for a moment and said. Harry seemed to have heard a lot. I will let Minerva tell him. Professor Dumbledore sighed. Well, that's about it. Finally. After a pause, a smile appeared on Professor Dumbledore's face. You solved the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets in time before anyone met with misfortune. 200 points for Hufflepuff. Adam was a little surprised, but he found that he didn't need to be so surprised. It would be strange if Professor Dumbledore didn't give him extra points. Although it seemed a bit stiff for Harry to give Gryffindor extra points at the end of each year, it must be said that the things he did were indeed worth extra points. Otherwise, how could other professors sit and watch Professor Dumbledore's performance? However, Professor Dumbledore's performance was not over yet. For solving the truth of the case that year, 50 points for Hufflepuff. On behalf of Myrtle and Hagrid, who was framed that year, I thank you for your feat. It seems that a medal in the trophy display room should be cleared out. This is what I should do, Professor. Professor Dumbledore smiled and nodded. Don't forget to keep these things confidential, and pay attention to your little pet. Go. After leaving the principal's office, Adam reviewed his gains today. First, the existence of the Cloucards and his knowledge of Horcruxes were made public, so that his spell casting, which was not concealed in the first place, could be more open and aboveboard, and the Ravenclaw diadem obtained from the Room of Requirement could also be arranged. Second, regarding the basilisk, he obtained a book on learning Parseltongue from Professor Dumbledore, and also received a bonus of Merman language, which was an unexpected gain. Finally, the magic of the love card was tested. Sure enough, this love card that has been in effect is very powerful. This is also the effect of the love card that Adam discovered accidentally. The love card can subtly influence the people around. For people who have a certain emotional foundation with themselves, the love card is probably equivalent to a halo that rationalizes things. The effect is proportional to the depth of emotion and the degree to which the other party is affected by emotional factors. Even if it is such an outrageous thing to raise a basilisk in the school, Professor Dumbledore actually agreed. It seems that Professor Dumbledore is really emotional. Originally, Adam thought that at most he would be shaken. He was ready to sacrifice this basilisk. Now it seems that another basilisk can be put into the pot. Make basilisk soup or dragon and phoenix fight. After coming back to his senses from the food, Adam's attention returned to the love card. The effect of the love card he has discovered so far is more than just affecting the people around him. Chapter 73. In addition to affecting the people around him, Adam discovered another ability of the card of love, which was a bit magical. How to say it, he didn't know exactly what this ability was used for, but the somewhat illusory figure with red hair and green eyes that he could see beside Harry should not be the effect of other Clow cards. After excluding them, it must be the ability of the card of love. Because there was only this abnormality at present, Adam couldn't test what happened specifically and what this ability was, so he could only put this question aside for the time being. On the way back to the dormitory, Adam was asked about the Chamber of Secrets by his classmates countless times, and Adam had only one answer to this. Professor Dumbledore asked me to keep it a secret, maybe you can ask Professor Dumbledore. For the little badger who planned to abide by the agreement honestly, the other little wizards had no way to deal with it, but there was no doubt that the problem of the Chamber of Secrets had been solved. The sudden extra house points of Hufflepuff could not be used by Professor Dumbledore to buy candy. Back to the dormitory, Adam was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief, but what followed was the eyes of the four roommates. How to describe that look? It was a bit complicated. It felt like the look Lindeau gave Jiabayu, which made Adam's non-existent conscience feel a phantom pain. Okay, brothers, listen to my explanation first. Adam raised his hands in surrender under the gaze of the four people. The five people sat down on the small sofa together, and Adam told everyone what happened before. Although he promised Professor Dumbledore to keep it a secret, it was obvious that his roommates were not within the scope of the agreement, and they were all very tight-lipped people. Unlike a gamekeeper who seemed to have grown up drinking truth serum. After telling the story, Adam emphasized again. It's really not that I don't take you with me. There is nothing interesting this time, and the basilisk is so dangerous. Well, your experience this time is indeed quite monotonous. Bernard sighed with some regret. The so-called secret room turned out to be a sewer, and there was a big snake in it that would kill anyone who stared at it. This was completely different from what he imagined. At least there should be various puzzles to solve, and there should be giant golems or magical animals guarding, right? After listening to Bernard's speech, Adam felt that if he was born 100 years earlier, if he could meet a fifth-year transfer student, he might be able to see what he wanted to see. So, what about the basilisk? Can we see it? Eugene was a little curious about what the legendary basilisk looked like. Adam thought for a while. Wait until I dig out the eyes of the basilisk and show them to you. The basilisk that was going to be put into the pot had to be killed anyway, so why not let them see it? Well, forget it. Isn't it a bit? Cologne frowned and said, and then heard Adam say. It's okay, it's going to be put into the pot anyway. Then let's take a look. Cologne immediately changed his words and swallowed his saliva. As for the basilisk's deadly poison, it doesn't matter, he believes Adam will solve it. If it doesn't work, he still has chopsticks made of unicorn horns. He knew that he would need this thing one day. Christmas was approaching, so why not give everyone this kind of chopsticks as gifts this year? He solved the problem of gifts for everyone except Adam in one go. Yeah, V. Then they discussed the time to go to the Forbidden Forest. It has been delayed for so long. If we don't go now, it will be the next year. Why don't we go during the Christmas holiday? Uther suggested. We have to do homework during the weekdays, and it always feels a bit too rushed to squeeze in time to go on weekends. Although it was an adventure, they didn't have any purpose. It was more like going to the Forbidden Forest for fun. If they had to think about going back to do their homework quickly, it would be too disappointing. But it's not safe to enter the Forbidden Forest on a snowy day. Eugene frowned. Even if we go tomorrow, it will snow. Everyone, it's already December. Bernard sighed. Eugene and Cologne, who had repeatedly postponed the appointment in the Forbidden Forest for personal reasons, were speechless, so the time to go to the Forbidden Forest was officially confirmed. Don't worry, I'm sure I can protect everyone this time. Adam, who had already practiced protective magic to the point where he could shield others, patted his chest and said. The next day, the atmosphere of the entire Hogwarts changed quietly. The threat of the Chamber of Secrets was lifted, and the dark clouds that had been shrouding the castle suddenly dissipated. The young wizards suddenly regained their former liveliness. The few who were in a bad mood were probably the few Slytherin students who claimed to be pure blood and were proud of it. Before yesterday, they could still look at those mudbloods with their heads held high. The half-blood wizards were in a hurry all day, but everything changed today. For this reason, they even launched a boycott of Adam's products, trying to make Adam, who caused all this, suffer heavy losses, but not many people responded. After all, not all Slytherins are pure-blooded. On the contrary, after this news was spread by someone unknown, those non-pure blood wizards who were originally afraid immediately ran to Adam's store to buy. I probably know why so many businesses like to provoke confrontation. This is really about making money. Unfortunately, I don't value money very much. Making money has become a problem for me now. From opening the store to closing it, Adam felt a little tired after closing the stall. He sighed. Opening this store is really the thing I regret the most. The happiest time was when I only used a shoulder bag to sell snacks. Unfortunately, I can't go back now. Cedric, who bought the last sweet osmanthus candied lotus root next to him, felt a toothache when he heard it. Forget it, Adam's candy will not cause tooth decay. It should be an illusion caused by too much defense against the dark arts class. He quickly drank a sip of honey tea to moisten it. At the strong request of his classmates, the honey tea, which was seriously oversweetened, was suppressed by the sweet osmanthus candied lotus root and still burst out enough sweetness between the lips and teeth, soothing Cedric's frown. Adam, have you heard? What did you hear? After finishing the dining cart, Adam turned around and saw Cedric leaning next to him and whispering. Professor Lockhart said in today's class that he already knew where the Chamber of Secrets was and what the monster in the Chamber of Secrets was, and that you were able to solve the Chamber of Secrets monster thanks to his teaching. It seems that his injuries have healed completely. Adam narrowed his eyes. Normally, he didn't care much about rumors, but why was Lockhart so hated? Just after releasing the grudge for his roommates, Adam was considering whether to get into the movie business, and if so, how realistic should he make it so that it wouldn't be too extreme. Lockhart happened to bump into him, so let Professor Lockhart do the experiment. Oh no, experience it. Chapter 74. Studying and living in Hogwarts passed very quickly for most young wizards. With another heavy snowfall, Adam welcomed his second Christmas in Hogwarts. Students, calm down, calm down. With last year's experience, the young wizards stretched their claws to the various decorations on the table as soon as they entered the hall. Professor Dumbledore quickly stopped them. I hope that everyone's table will not be too messy at the end of the dinner, okay? No problem, Professor Dumbledore. The twins' answer could be heard even by Hufflepuff, but they took the vase in front of them away the next second. You guys! Under Ron's stunned gaze, the two smiled brightly at him. Little Ronnie, let's eat the whole vase of flowers. Won't the table be messy? Then the two divided the bouquet and smashed the vase with a metal spoon. The flowers are flour-flavored cloud cakes, the branches are hazelnut-filled Pocky cookies, and the vase is sweet and light mint candy. Oh, by the way, we heard from Adam that this year's table is really edible. Yes, we can swear in the name of magic tricks. Ron hesitated for a moment, but he couldn't help his curiosity after all, and with the status of magic tricks in Fred and George's hearts, they shouldn't lie. Ouch! Ron's eyes lit up when he bit the corner of the table. Although it's hard to chew, the texture is obviously not wood. It's really edible. Harry looked at him, hesitant to speak. Ron only thought about the position of the magic trick shop in the hearts of the twins. Has he ever thought about what the magic trick shop does? After much effort, Ron finally gnawed off a corner of the table and chewed it with anticipation. Then his whole face slowly wrinkled. What is this? Ugh! Ron stuck out his tongue, and the whole tongue was covered with black and sticky substances. 100% pure chocolate. We assure you that it is edible. The twins looked at each other, with the same smile on their faces, and clapped their hands. It's just that the taste is not acceptable to everyone. Sometimes I really wonder how many kinds of delicacies Adam has in his head. Cedric's mouth was filled with strawberry daifuku, and his voice became unclear. What you should be curious about is how many kinds of delicacies there are in this world. As Adam spoke, he reached out and grabbed a gingerbread man running in front of him and threw it into his mouth. It tastes like brown sugar. In a warm atmosphere, the Christmas banquet was over for most of the time, and Cologne suddenly spoke. I was wondering why something was wrong. It turns out that Professor Lockhart is not here. Why do you mention him? Isn't it just right that he doesn't come? Bernard looked unlucky when he heard the name. I'm just a little curious. Generally speaking, this guy will not miss any opportunity to attract everyone's attention. Cologne thought about it and felt that it was indeed unlucky, so he continued to turn his attention to the golden and crispy red bean pie in front of him. Lockhart. He is now in love with new female fans such as Annabelle, Ghost Nun, and Yolona. I guess he won't be free to jump during this holiday. The hero who won a normal Christmas holiday for everyone shrugged, hiding his name. On the second day of the banquet, everyone slept in. In the afternoon, some played wizard chess by the fireplace, some read books, and some practiced spells. After dinner, Adam's dormitory gathered again, and the target was the Forbidden Forest. Adam, are you done? I always feel that this posture is a bit embarrassing. Under the fill light of the sign, Cologne, who was half squatting with one hand on the ground, spoke silently. Me too. Uther leaned sideways, supported his elbow with one hand, and pointed his index finger on his forehead with the other hand in a contemplative state, with half of his face in the shadow. Oh, it will be done soon, come. 3, 2, 1. As the flash came on, the poses of the 5 people were frozen on the film. Hey! Eugene put down his hand and let out a long breath, rubbing his cheeks. I suddenly regret it a little. Will it look awkward when it's developed? Oh, how could it be? Everyone is so handsome. Adam waved his hand and ran up to put away the camera. The camera with a tripod can be put away in a small compartment in the bag under the magic of the small card. Last time I came to the Forbidden Forest, I didn't take a group photo, but this time the scenery is better. I hope I won't encounter the acromantula again this time. Bernard sighed. That kind of thing really ruins the adventure experience. Don't worry. This time I brought a secret weapon to deal with the 8-eyed giant spider. Even if I really encounter it, it will be fine. Adam patted his bag. When he encounters the 8-eyed giant spider again, he will directly open the jar and release the basilisk. The spider's 360-degree vision and the structure of the eyeball that cannot close its eyes are destined to make the basilisk a natural enemy of all spiders. After making preparations, the 5 of them walked into the Forbidden Forest. The grass in front of the left is moving. It should be that some animal saw us approaching and ran away. Should we chase it? Bernard picked up the lantern and said excitedly. Although the air around was illuminated by the small light balls released by Adam, wouldn't it be more atmospheric to hold the lantern? Such a movement should be just a rabbit. Cologne analyzed calmly, but then he was a little uncertain. It seems that the young moon beast is also this big. The moonlight tonight doesn't look like there will be moon beasts. Adam glanced at the waning moon above his head. But this is our first discovery, it doesn't hurt to chase it and see. After finding traces of walking in the bushes, the 5 of them walked forward and followed to a small river. There is actually a river in the Forbidden Forest. Cologne exclaimed first, then slapped himself in the face. Oh, okay, I was stupid. Such a large forest and the animals in it can't all rely on rainfall to feed themselves. The bad news is that we probably lost it, but the good news is that we have a greater chance of finding magical animals if we follow the river. Uther walked to the river and squatted down, checking the possible footprints on the riverside. This should be a deer, this is, what's the hoof? Centaurs, unicorns, hippogriffs, all possible. The footprints may not be very specific. Adam shrugged, suddenly reached out and grabbed Uther's shoulders and pulled him back. Be careful. Just as Uther left his position, a big green mouth emerged from the water. Thunder explosion. Blood spread in the river, Uther covered his chest, his heart was beating rapidly. That's a Grindylow. Although they only met briefly, Cologne still recognized the owner of the mouth. Grindylow is a small water monster, strong but fragile, usually only able to deal with unsuspecting muggles and very young wizards, with a danger level of XX, the same level as Pu Wrong. The danger is secondary, the main thing is that it's a bit scary to suddenly jump out. Adam was also caught off guard and subconsciously reached out to pull it. In fact, he could easily deal with a horse-shaped water monster even if he opened a shield. It seems that he is still not used to the existence of magic in his subconscious. Chapter 75. That Grindylow was just a small episode. As they walked downstream along the river, they found a lot more. Not only ordinary animals like deer and rabbits, but even 2 nests of moon beasts were found. The big eyes made Adam curious about the brain structure of the moon beasts. However, after touching the soft fur of the moon beasts twice, Adam put this question, which was a bit scary and cruel when he thought about it carefully, behind his mind. Why? As soon as he squatted down, the moon beast turned around and ran away. Cologne couldn't help but look at Adam, who was surrounded by the moon beasts, and complained. Do I look scary? This was of course a joke. Everyone in the dormitory was very good looking, but this did not prevent Cologne from feeling hurt. Maybe Adam is more in line with the aesthetics of the moon beasts. Although the moon beasts would not run away directly after Uther squatted down, the moon beasts would still stay away from him after he stretched out his hand to the moon beasts and would not let him touch them. Look at Adam, who is now surrounded by moon beasts and rubbed against him. Tisk. The slow-witted ones are still envious of Adam, while the smart Eugene has already rubbed against the moon beasts and embraced him. It should be safe here. The moon beasts and the ordinary animals they met before are hard to resist against ferocious carnivores, not to mention those powerful magical animals. Since they thrive here, it means there are no predators nearby. Ah! A sudden wail broke through the night sky, and Adam and others quickly stood up and looked in the direction of the sound. Ahem, no. Nothing. Bernard stood up, holding his stomach. Just now I was a little curious whether the pink moon beast was male or female, so I lifted its tail to take a look, and got kicked. Not far from Bernard, a pink-haired moon beast was jumping on the spot and shouting loudly. Well, it should be a very dirty curse. Adam, who was learning snake language, subconsciously memorized this passage of moon-crazy beast language. It turns out that swear words are always learned the fastest when learning any language. You should be glad that it's not a hippogriff, otherwise you would have scattered now. Cologne complained. No, if it was a hippogriff I wouldn't have taken a look directly. Bernard justified himself. Although he was curious, he was not stupid. We should go. We have stayed here long enough. Eugene said. And Bernard might not be very popular next time. After saying goodbye to the moon-crazy beasts, Adam and his friend's luck seemed to have run out all of a sudden. They didn't encounter any animals for a long time. Everyone, look at this. Cologne reached out and pinched something on the tree trunk with his sharp eyes. He brought it to everyone's eyes. It was a few silver-white hairs. This is the hair of a unicorn. How did you see it? Bernard couldn't help complaining, and at the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little excited in his heart that was a unicorn. Although he had just received a pair of chopsticks made of unicorn horns, he had never seen a live unicorn. I just happened to see it because of the reflection. It seems that there are unicorns nearby, and this luster, the unicorn has not gone far. Cologne carefully examined the unicorn hair in his hand. Unicorns are diurnal animals. They sleep at night. This unicorn must have sensed our movements and got up and fled, and even rubbed against the tree. Doesn't it mean it hasn't run far? Bernard was a little excited. We can try to chase it. What's the point of catching up with the unicorn? Eugene patted Bernard on the shoulder. Unicorns only accept virgins approaching, and we are not even women. Then we can at least take a look from a distance. I haven't seen a live unicorn yet. Bernard was a little unwilling to miss the unicorn. Then let's go and have a look. We don't intend to hurt the unicorn, we just want to take a look. Adam was also very curious about the unicorn. So the 5 of them followed the traces left by the unicorn. According to the traces, the unicorn is not far ahead. Hey! Cologne suddenly frowned. Did you hear any sound? It seems. It's the sound of horse hooves. Uther was still trying to figure it out, but Eugene had already given the answer. He frowned and said. Did the unicorn find its tribe? It's true that unicorns live in groups. But with the unicorn's personality, it would be fine if it happened to attack the wizard halfway, but wouldn't it be a bit strange for it to take the initiative to attack the enemy? The sound of horse hooves was getting closer and closer, and the other party took the initiative to deliver it to the door, and the 5 Peoplithi just stood there and waited, but each of them held their wands tightly and prepared for battle. Although they looked holy and beautiful, and were vegetarians, unicorns were not weak in combat power at all, and they lived in groups. There were almost no magical animals in nature that could feed on unicorns. However, when they really saw the approaching target, the 5 people were surprised and disappointed. It was not a unicorn, but a group of centaurs, about 20 or so, horses. 1. Individuals. The centaurs are human above the waist and horse below the waist. The color of the hair of the human part is the same as that of the horse part. They are like mermaids, with the same wisdom as humans but voluntarily belong to the beast, like to be close to nature and observe the stars. Eugene explained to them in a low voice. No wonder there are so many herbivores living in this area, it is the centaurs who protect them. Is this the poacher you are talking about? The centaurs carried bows and arrows, surrounded the 5 people in a circle, and the leader frowned and looked at his companions beside him. I only saw a group of foals who had just learned to walk. After that, the centaur stepped in front of the 5 people. Human cubs, you have crossed the line, this is our territory. Your territory? If I remember correctly, the dark forest belongs to Hogwarts. Although students are not allowed to enter, just like those abandoned rooms, the dark forest is still the property of Hogwarts. Uther did not give in. He looked up at the centaur who was half a body taller than him. The centaur who was walking forward had no intention of stopping and was about to step on Uther. The hoof was already raised in the air. As long as it fell, it would kick Uther over, but Uther still did not step back. The leading centaur narrowed his eyes and did not step down. This is not the place for you to come. Go back early. The hoof brushed Uther's body and fell. The centaur led the other centaur away in a sound of horse hooves. Wow! Uther, you are so amazing. You didn't lose to him in momentum just now. Seeing the centaurs go away, Cologne breathed a sigh of relief, and then rushed to Uther and hugged his shoulders excitedly. I read in the book that centaurs won't attack children. Uther smiled slightly. And if he had continued to move forward, I wouldn't be the one who regretted it. Although he said that, he was still nervous, and his palms were sweaty now. Adam nodded secretly. No matter what Uther prepared, his protective magic could protect Uther, and even if they didn't do anything, the centaur's end would not be good. You have to know that wizards generally look down on magical animals. As long as the wizards can report the magical animals that actively attack wizards, they can basically say goodbye to this world, not to mention that Uther's father is the Minister of Magic in Egypt.